Chapter 658. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Feng Xiangyu looked at Du Xiaofu and squeezed out a smile on his pale face. He said, "A loss is a loss. There's no need for so many reasons. However, this can be considered as resolving a knot in my heart. There's nothing I can't let go of in the future. If there's a chance in the future, I will definitely win it back." Du Xiaofu smiled and didn't speak any further. He glanced slightly to the side towards the nearby battlefield, and he just happened to see a strand of dazzling talisman markings blossoming like fireworks, and beneath the gorgeous and resplendent glow was an energy of destruction. Pucci, Shu Yang's body fell from the sky. After he landed, the dazzling talisman on his body shattered and a powerful aura dissipated. Shu Yang's long robe fluttered in the wind. After he stabilized his body, he stumbled a few steps back before he could stabilize his body. "Your human king martial pulse doesn't seem to be enough. Do you still want to use the pulse spirit? Otherwise, you won't be my opponent." Sima Muhan landed on the ground. Her dress fluttered in the wind and the accessories on her wrist jingled. She pouted her red lips and looked extremely cute. However, in Shu Yang's eyes, the girl in front of him wasn't cute at all. She was just a demon. She was publicly recognized as a demon in the ancient heaven sect. He could feel how terrifying and powerful this demon was. "I'm also not a match for the pulse spirit. I've lost." Shu Yang shook his head and said helplessly. He clearly knew what the demon's pulse spirit was. If he activated his pulse spirit, he would only be asking for a beating. Moreover, the demon's strength was not as simple as his pulse spirit. "This little niece has never used her full strength. I can't see through her." Du Xiaofu looked at Sima Muhan. There was a hint of doubt in his eyes. This girl's strength was definitely not simple. Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan win. Feng Xiangyu and Shu Yang lose. On the high platform, Elder Hu Sangquan's voice reverberated in the air. There was a hint of pain in his voice. "Supporting Uncle Master Du, I support young Mississippi." Around the Tianwu Square, shouts and cheers soared into the sky. In this world where the strong were respected no matter where they were. At this moment, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's victory immediately caused the crowd to erupt into cheers. Profound energy surged beneath Shu Yang and Feng Xiangyu's feet, and they tapped the tips of their feet lightly before their figures instantly retreated from the square. Sima Muhan looked at the Du Xiaofu from not too far away, and let out a soft snort from her throat. Her light purple eyes raised, and her small mouth pouted, adding a bit of coquettishness and cuteness. "I'm afraid this girl will be difficult to deal with." Du Xiaofu's eyes moved. He felt that Sima Muhan was definitely not easy to deal with. In the last round, to fight for first place, Du Xiaofu versus Sima Muhan. Elder Hu Sangquan looked at the crowd of spectators around the square, and his voice reverberated in the air. He said, "However, there has been a sudden change in the rules of this round, and it will be postponed to tomorrow morning." "What? It has to be postponed until tomorrow? Why is there a sudden change in the rules? In the past, isn't it only one day?" As soon as Elder Hu Sangquan's voice fell, whispers could be heard from the crowd. Many disciples were puzzled. In the past, the first place would be decided in one day, but this year, it would be split into 2 days. In the square, Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu were also puzzled. "Tomorrow, to fight for first place, the sect leader will be here personally. The two of you should prepare well today. Now, everyone can leave." Elder Hu Sangquan continued. As soon as Elder Hu Sangquan's voice fell, the entire square was in an uproar, and waves of voices could be heard. "I didn't expect the sect master to come personally tomorrow. From the looks of it, sect master is extremely concerned about eldest miss and martial uncle Du. That's why he personally came. In the past, sect master has never personally come to such a duel. I wonder who will win tomorrow, eldest miss or martial uncle Du. Young mistress's talent is monstrous. Uncle Master Du is very strong, but I think he's still lacking compared to young mistress." "That's not necessarily true. Martial Uncle Du is definitely not a weakling. We'll know who wins and who loses, and who takes first place tomorrow." Whispers and discussions resounded throughout the square. Some were doubtful while others were expectant. At dusk, the setting sun shrouded the sky with red clouds. On Tianmu Peak, in the courtyard, Elder Gu Qingyang's face was full of smiles as he looked at Du Xiaofu. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. He stuffed a large number of pills into Du Xiaofu's hands and said, "Tomorrow, you will fight with that girl Mu Han. These are all pills to replenish your Xian Qi. They will be of great help to your recovery. Quickly take these pills and adjust your breathing. Master, junior brother is only at the martial marquis realm. These are all king-grade pills. I'm afraid junior brother will be in trouble after taking them." Yu Wanli saw that his master's large number of pills were all king-grade. They were filled with light and contained astonishing energy. He immediately reminded his master kindly. If a martial marquis realm cultivator were to take king-grade pills, it would indeed be very troublesome. Your junior brother will have no problem taking king-grade pills. Unlike you, who was so disappointing and didn't give your master any face. Elder Gu Qingyang turned his head and glared at Yu Wanli. Back then, this third disciple of his had made him lose a lot of Dao tools and pills. Fortunately, he had gotten his revenge this time. As for king-grade pills, Elder Gu Qingyang already knew that Du Xiaofu had taken them before. There wouldn't be much of a problem. To be able to defeat a martial king realm cultivator at the martial marquis realm and even kill a martial king realm nirvana realm cultivator at the fertile field city, how could an ordinary martial king realm cultivator be compared to him? Seeing his master's glare, Yu Wanli didn't dare to say anything more. He secretly stuffed a marquis-grade pill into Du Xiaofu's hands and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, don't listen to your master too much. Take the pills yourself." "Thank you, third senior brother." Du Xiaofu didn't reject his third senior brother Yu Wanli's pills. Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang and his third senior brother in front of him, warmth flowed in his heart. At least you know what's good for you. Treat your junior brother better. Elder Gu Qingyang also saw all of this and looked at Yu Wanli with satisfaction. Then, he asked Du Xiaofu, "Xiaofu, how's your cultivation of the Bright Saint Sword Manual?" "Master, I have some insights." Du Xiaofu replied, "That's good. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me at any time. The Bright Saint Sword Manual is also a secret in our entire Ancient Heaven sect. It's extremely powerful." Elder Gu Qingyang looked at the Du Xiaofu and said, "Tomorrow, when you and that girl Mu Han fight, you must pay attention to that girl Mu Han's 3 absolutes." "Which 3 absolutes?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu asked curiously. Yu Wanli's face revealed a wry smile, and his eyes were also filled with shock. He said to Du Xiaofu, "Junior brother, martial nephew Mu Han is extraordinary. Her heavenly talent is known as a monster. Her 3 absolutes are sword techniques, pulse soul, and martial vein. You must be careful when you fight with her tomorrow." Sword technique, pulse soul, martial vein. Du Xiaofu's gaze slightly fluctuated. Tomorrow, Sima Mu Han would indeed be a strong opponent, but if he couldn't win, then there would be trouble. That girl Mu Han is a bit abnormal. Just do your best tomorrow. Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu, "Even if you lose tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Master is still here. Disciple will do his best." Du Xiaofu had a wry smile on his face. It seemed like his master didn't have much confidence in him. "All right, go back and prepare well. Tomorrow, your senior brother, the sect master, will personally watch the battle. You must perform well." Elder Gu Qingyang suddenly said to Du Xiaofu with a serious expression, "You must remember, sometimes you must know how to restrain yourself, but sometimes you must go all out. The more extraordinary you are, the more cultivation resources you will be able to obtain in the Ancient Sky sect, and the more benefits it will bring to you in the future. Even in my Ancient Sky sect, the best resources are limited and can only be given to the most extraordinary disciples. Do you understand?" Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Gu Qingyang, nodded, and said, "Disciple understands. I will definitely do my best tomorrow." "All right, with your words, Master is relieved. Even if you lose tomorrow, it doesn't matter. You have already given Master face, but Master still hopes that you can win. It's not because you can win face for me, but because you can soar into the sky and look down on your peers." Elder Gu Qingyang said. His tone was sonorous and powerful, and his eyes flickered with a brilliant light. Du Xiaofu nodded vigorously and didn't say anything else. His master, Elder Gu Qingyang, was very clear in his heart. No matter where it was, only the most talented people would be able to obtain the best resources. Even in Tianwu Academy, it was the same. The strong were respected, and the weak were eliminated. This was an unchanging principle. After leaving Tianmu Peak, Du Xiaofu returned to his own peak to prepare for tomorrow's battle. Just as he returned to his peak, Du Xiaofu saw an unexpected figure. He was elegant and handsome enough to make any girl's heart flutter. It was the current number 1 on the bronze ranking, Yin Mochen. Seeing Yin Mochen, before Du Xiaofu could say anything, he saw Yin Mochen take out a wine jar. With a wave of his hand, the fragrance of the wine dispersed with the wind. Fragrant wine. Good wine. Although Du Xiaofu didn't know much about wine, under the influence of his drunkard father, he had a special sense of smell for wine. He could immediately sense that the wine jar was definitely good wine. Of course, if it was taken out by Yin Mochen, no matter how bad the wine was, it couldn't be bad. Chapter 659. After a while, the sun set in the west and the mountains stretched out. On one of the mountain peaks, smoke rose in spirals, accompanied by the tempting aroma of meat. On the grill made of rocks, a medium-sized, low-grade demon beast was being grilled on the grill. The aroma of meat filled the air, along with the sizzling sound of oil and the aroma of the meat. The entire mountain was filled with the aroma of the meat. Du Xiaofu rolled up his long sleeves, looking like a chef. He sprinkled a lot of spices on the barbecued meat, and the fragrance wafted out. Yin Mochen, who was beside him, was dumbfounded. The low-rank demonic beast was caught by Du Xiaofu from this mountain range. Within the territory of the ancient heaven sect, low-rank demonic beasts could be found everywhere, and there were even many demonic beast kings. However, they seemed to be the demonic beast mounts of the ancient heaven sect's disciples, so Du Xiaofu didn't have any ideas about them. I didn't expect you to have this skill. It looks pretty good. Yin Mochen stared at the barbecued meat in front of Du Xiaofu, and couldn't help but look at Du Xiaofu in a different light. This skill is something I have learned since I was young. Du Xiaofu faintly smiled. Back then in the Stone City's Du family, Fu Yibai had brought him along to do such things many times. At this moment he did not know where that old fellow had run off to. Perhaps he would not have the chance to see that old fellow again in his life. This made Du Xiaofu feel a little regretful. If he had known earlier, he would not have let Fu Yibai run around. I was wondering why you would carry spices with you. Yin Mochen was puzzled. When he saw Du Xiaofu taking out spices from his Qiankuan bag, he couldn't help but feel puzzled. However, no cultivator would keep spices in their Qiankuan bag. After all, they weren't chefs. This is my personal preference. When I'm hungry, I can make a meal at any time. Du Xiaogang smiled. Yin Mochen stood in front of Du Xiaofu. There was no doubt that he was a handsome man, and not just any ordinary handsome man. As the first on the bronze list, he could even rank in the top 10 on the gold list. He had an extremely high status in the Manchu and was deeply loved by countless female disciples. However, at this moment, as he stood in front of the barbecued meat and smelled the aroma of the meat, he couldn't help but drool for some unknown reason. In the entire ancient heaven sect, aside from Du Xiaofu, no one else would be able to see such a scene. When Du Xiaofu roasted the meat until it was at its most fragrant, the two of them shared it. Good meat. Good wine. On the mountain peak, the two of them ate heartily, wolfing down the food. They didn't look like dignified inner sect disciples of the ancient heaven sect at all. After eating his fill, Yin Mochen burped and patted his stomach. A satisfied smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, I don't know how long it has been since I last ate. This is also the first time I've eaten something so delicious. There will be more opportunities in the future. Du Xiaofu patted his sleeves and stood up with a smile on his face. It had been a long time since he ate so heartily. Yin Mochen smiled and looked at Du Xiaofu, saying, I said I would treat you to a drink, and I didn't go back on my words. Good wine. Du Xiaofu smiled. This wine was indeed very good. It was much better than the wine his drunkard father drank at the Stone City's Du family. However, although it was good wine, it couldn't taste the same as before. The wine was good, but the taste was wrong. How are your preparations for tomorrow's battle with junior sister Muhan? Inmachin looked at Du Xiaofu. A gentle breeze blew on the mountain peak, causing his clothes to flutter. He was still elegant and spotless as he said, "Be careful of junior sister Muhan's 3 absolutes. Sword technique, martial spirit, and martial vein?" Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. He had already heard about it from his master and 3rd senior brother. "It seems like you already know that junior sister Muhan is not easy to deal with. Even if I were to face her now, I'm afraid I wouldn't have any chance of winning. Work hard tomorrow." After Inmachin finished speaking, he looked at Du Xiaofu with a smile and then left. His elegant figure then disappeared into the distance. Du Xiaofu stayed quietly on the mountain peak for a while before leaving as well. Night slowly fell and twilight enveloped the earth. A full moon quietly climbed into the sky. The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. "Father, why did you postpone the duel today? Wouldn't it be over if you let me defeat that guy directly?" In the quiet courtyard, Sima Muhan looked at Sima Ta Xing. There was some doubt in her light purple eyes. Her small mouth was slightly pouted. Obviously, she was somewhat dissatisfied. "It's not that I want to postpone it. It's that an elder in your Manchu found something interesting about that kid, so he wants to take a good look tomorrow. I just happen to have nothing to do, so I'll go and watch the fun." Sima Ta Xing smiled at his beloved daughter. "That guy isn't weak, but tomorrow won't change the result. I'll still defeat that annoying guy." Sima Muhan pouted and said, "Listening to your politeness, it seems like that kid offended you?" Sima Ta Xing asked doubtfully. This, Sima Muhan frowned. She thought about it carefully for a while. That guy didn't seem to have offended her, but she didn't know why, but she felt that he had offended her. Seeing this, Sima Ta Xing smiled and said, "Girl, you should prepare for tomorrow's duel. Your elders in the Manchu said that that kid is not simple. It won't be easy for you to defeat him." "I will definitely defeat that guy tomorrow." Sima Muhan pouted, turned around, and left. The ornaments on her wrist made a crisp, tinkling sound. Sima Ta Xing looked at his beloved daughter's back and smiled. Then, he slightly raised his head and murmured, "Where did that kid come from? He really surprises me again and again." The moon was bright and the stars were sparse. The mountains and earth were shrouded in the twilight. The ancient heaven sect was still quite lively. Tomorrow morning, Du Xiaofu and Miss Sima Muhan would postpone their duel. The entire sect was looking forward to it. Especially today, Miss Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu's performance on the Heaven Martial Square. They both easily defeated Mortal Monarch Heavenly Aptitude experts. One of them was a Mortal Monarch Heavenly Aptitude expert, while the other was the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang. Their statuses were quite special. This made the entire Manchu look forward to their duel even more. "I wonder if Miss or Martial Uncle Du will win tomorrow. Their strength is unfathomable. Anyway, I bet 20 million magnetite on Mississippi. I hope she wins." "Only 20 million magnetite? I bet 30 million magnetite on Martial Uncle Du, and I even bet 3 marquis rank pills." At night, Du Xiaofu returned to his courtyard and entered the ancient desolate space. Under Zhen Qingquan's guidance, he continued to comprehend the soul-trapping formation. If someone knew that Du Xiaofu was still in the mood to comprehend the soul-trapping formation when he was about to face off against Sima Muhan tomorrow, who knew what they would think? And all of this was because Zhen Qingquan had promised Du Xiaofu that as long as he comprehended the soul-trapping formation to Zhen Qingquan's satisfaction, he would consider imparting another method to Du Xiaofu. It was said that the method had a lot to do with the soul-trapping formation. One had to comprehend the soul-trapping formation to a certain extent before they could comprehend and cultivate the method. Du Xiaofu was looking forward to it. The things on his big brother, Zhen Qingquan, were no ordinary things. This kid is simply a monster. How can he let others live? Zhen Qingquan watched Du Xiaofu's comprehension from the side. His expression changed continuously. In the end, he simply couldn't be bothered to watch, so as to avoid angering himself. One night was equivalent to 5 days in the ancient desolate space. Under Zhen Qingquan's reminder, Du Xiaofu, who was immersed in his comprehension, had no choice but to leave the ancient desolate space. There was still a duel waiting outside. Early in the morning, when the darkness before dawn had just passed, the entire Tianwu Square was already crowded with people waiting for today's highly anticipated duel and contest. Did you see that? Yin Machen, Si Ruofeng, Ji Aoming, and the other experts on the bronze list are all here to watch the duel. Not only the experts on the bronze list, but I also saw the horrifying overlords on the silver list. Of course. Even the sect master is here to watch the duel between the young lady and Junior Du. I wonder who will win today. There was a lot of chatter, noise, and whispers all gathered together. The sound waves resounded throughout the Tianwu Square and could be heard clearly from afar. My apologies, everyone. I was on the bus this morning and did not have the time to send out the notice. I thought I would be able to arrive early. This is a chapter that I just rushed out and did not have the time to correct the typos. Brothers, take a look first. I will edit it later. Let's rush out the next chapter first. Once again, I apologize to all the brothers for not sending out the notice in advance today. This is Xiao Yu's fault. Chapter 660. Whoosh whoosh, all of a sudden, the sound of wind breaking could be heard in midair. Many streaks of light streaked across the sky. The boisterous square gradually quieted down. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sky. Look, the elders are here. Miss Muhan is here too. Sect Master, the Sect Master is really here. That's the Sect Master of my ancient heaven sect, a top expert whose name shakes the central continent. Silhouettes landed on the high platform one after another. Faintly discernible chi descended and spread out in the air, causing people's hearts to tremble. Looking at the silhouettes arriving one after another, the gazes of the hundreds of thousands of people on the Tianwu Square became filled with reverence and they immediately bowed. Greetings, Sect Master. Greetings, protectors. In the square, all the disciples of the Ancient Heaven sect saluted respectfully. The Sect Master of the Ancient Heaven sect was a top expert in the Central Continent. He was someone who could make the Central Continent tremble with just a stomp of his foot. He was a godlike existence in the hearts of all the disciples of the Ancient Heaven sect. All the disciples of the Ancient Heaven sect had heard of the legend of the Sect Master when he was young, and they were even more respectful towards him. On the high platform, behind Hu Sangquan, Hao Zhongwei, Kong Zhonglei, Qiao Mingze, and the other elders and protectors, there was a middle-aged man who was nearly 7 feet tall. There was a faint luster flowing on his skin, and his eyes flashed with a deep light. The burly man was thin, but he looked slender and sturdy. He wore a green robe embroidered with green patterns, and his long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. A few strands of hair hung down from his ears. He looked elegant and heroic. He was the Ancient Heaven sect's sect master, Sima Taxing. No need for formalities. When you watch the duel later, you should properly comprehend it, Sima Taxing said. He stood with his hands behind his back. His slender voice seemed even more tall and straight, and there was a hint of elegance in his imposing manner. Yes. Waves of sound rose and fell as figures stood up. Father, I'll go down first. On the high platform, a delicate voice sounded beside Sima Taxing, and then a beautiful figure slowly landed on the square. She was wearing a pair of patterned velvet shoes, wearing a moon-white and pink brocade dress. A light pink gauze cloak was draped over her shoulders, and a pink belt was tied around her waist, which accentuated her well-proportioned figure. Her slender waist was too small to be grasped, and there were 2 shining white bracelets on her wrists. When she raised her hands, they made a pleasant sound, which made her even more lovely. I support young Mississippi, support senior sister Muhan. As Sima Muhan left the stage, a lot of cheers rang out from the crowd. This was especially true for the young male disciples. Sima Muhan was definitely the target of all the male disciples in the Ancient Heaven sect. Everyone knew that if one could gain the favor of the young Miss Sima Muhan, it would not only save them 30 years of hard work, it would be like reaching the heavens in a single step, and they would be able to stand proudly in the entire central region. Sect Master, please take a seat first. That kid Du Xiaofu hasn't arrived yet. Hu Sangquan said to Sima Taxing and signaled for Sima Taxing to sit first. In his heart, he hoped that Du Xiaofu wouldn't come. If Du Xiaofu won against Sima Muhan today, the Dao tool he lost yesterday would be doubled today. Martial uncle, please take a seat first. Sima Taxing heard this and said to Elder Gu Qingyang beside him. Elder Gu Qingyang was particularly spirited today. With an ancient sword on his back, his white hair fluttered in the wind, and a few strands of white hair fluttered along with his white beard. He looked extremely sage-like, as if an immortal had descended to the world. Hearing this, he immediately said to Sima Taxing, "You're welcome, martial nephew. You're the sect master of the ancient heaven sect. Please take a seat first." "Martial uncle, let's sit together." Sima Taxing nodded. In his deep, glass-like eyes, he was also extremely respectful to Elder Gu Qingyang. "Well, let's sit together." Elder Gu Qingyang slightly stroked his long beard. His face was full of smiles, which made the other elders feel helpless. On the high platform, everyone sat upright. Elder Gu Qingyang sat quietly beside Sima Taxing. On his extremely ruddy face, his eyes were unusually clear. After glancing at the many elders around him, he closed his eyes and meditated like an immortal, which made people feel awe and respect him. However, when he landed beside the many elders around him, he felt like he was attracting hatred. It should be known that although not all the elders of the ancient heaven sect were present, at least 90% of the elders were present yesterday. Yesterday, they all felt some heartache when they lost. Elder Hu Songkuan's gaze looked into the distance. After which, he looked at the sage-like Elder Gu Qingyang and said, "Elder Qingyang, is your disciple, Du Xiaofu, coming or not? If he doesn't dare to come, then just admit defeat. Otherwise, the sect master will have to wait." Hearing this, the sage-like Elder Qingyang immediately opened his slightly closed eyes. His gaze was clear as he glanced at Elder Hu Songkuan and said, "What's the hurry? Don't worry, you've lost twice. You're destined to not be able to escape. Let's talk about it after that guy wins." Elder Hu Songkuan helplessly glared at Elder Gu Qingyang. Sima Taxing looked at the sky in front of him without leaving a trace. After which, he lowered his head and smiled at Elder Hu Songkuan. He said, "That little guy is already here." Swoosh, in the distant sky, the sound of rushing wind began to resound. Under the gazes of everyone present, a figure swept through the air and arrived above the square in a few flashes. "Look, Martial Uncle Du is here? I heard that the sect master hasn't definitely agreed to let Du Xiaofu become Elder Gu Qingyang's disciple. So, it's not certain whether this martial uncle is martial uncle or not." Swoosh, while everyone was discussing, their gazes were fixed on the sky in front of them. A purple-robed figure swept through the air. He looked to be 17 or 18 years old. He always carried a broadsword on his back. On his resolute face, there was a deep and clear gaze. This purple-robed youth, apart from Du Xiaofu, naturally, there was no one else. Du Xiaofu's arrival immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. Numerous shouts resounded from the crowd. It was obvious that there were quite a number of female disciples screaming. Ripples rippled in the eyes of many as their hearts were moved. Big Brother's popularity is not low now. I'm afraid that he's not below Yin Mochen and Si Ruofeng. Judge Hao, who was at the front of the crowd today, said to Qiao Yingmeng, Benyu, Mu Jiejie, Mo Wen, and the others beside him. Then, he looked at Du Xiaofu descending on the square and waved his hand. "That's for sure. Our world society can only grow stronger with President's popularity. There are already many people who joined yesterday." Gu Zhangyu nodded and said. He was extremely respectful beside Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Mo Wen, and the others. If he wasn't a senior figure of the world society, he knew that he wasn't qualified to stand together with these senior brothers and senior sisters. Although the world society was established in the ancient heaven sect for a very short time, Gu Zhangyu was undoubtedly a senior figure. Because of this, Gu Zhangyu's status in the outer sect had soared these days. With Judge Hao, Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Jiejie, Mo Wen, and the others as his backers, it was enough for the deacons of the Manchu to be somewhat polite to him. President is facing a formidable opponent today. I wonder if President can win? Qiao Yingmeng was quite worried. If it was someone else, she wouldn't be worried. But facing Sima Muhan, she couldn't help but be worried. especially when she heard from her master that the eldest young Miss Sima Muhan's talent could be said to be monstrous, which made her even more worried. President is also not weak. His strength is unfathomable. I'm afraid that he didn't use his full strength yesterday. I'm afraid that no one can be sure who will win or lose. Emowen, who rarely spoke, said, Big Brother definitely won't lose. I have confidence. Judge Hao nodded. His eyes were filled with determination, as if he had full confidence. Judge Hao, I heard that you bet all your assets on President. Mu Jiajia glanced at Judge Hao and said with a smile, I hope President can win. Otherwise, someone will go bankrupt. I believe that Big Brother will definitely win. Judge Hao said with unswerving determination. However, on his fat face, within his straight eyes, there was a hint of worry in his gaze. Judge Hao had indeed bet all his assets, including all the energy copper talismans he had obtained in the giant rock space. If Du Xiaofu lost, he would be in trouble. Du Xiaofu's figure landed on the ground. His purple robe fluttered, stirring up some dust. His clear eyes swept across the audience. Hearing the shouts from the surroundings, he smiled bitterly and nodded. Then he nodded towards Judge Hao and Xiao Yingmeng, who were in the front row. Suddenly, he raised his head and felt a gaze staring at him from not far away. Looking over, Du Xiaofu saw Sima Muhan raise her beautiful face slightly. Her quick-witted eyes were glancing at him. Her light purple eyes were filled with confidence. Du Xiaofu ignored Sima Muhan, but he didn't dare to be careless in front of this girl. He pretended that he didn't see Sima Muhan's gaze. Then, he looked at the elders' seats on the high platform and cupped his fists to salute the sect master and the elders. As the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang, his status in the ancient heaven sect was extraordinary. Even in front of the sect master, Du Xiaofu didn't need to salute him at this time. Humph, I'll deal with you in a while. Seeing that Du Xiaofu didn't intend to pay attention to her, Sima Muhan couldn't help but feel angry. She pouted and slightly clenched her fists. Well, everyone is here. Let them begin. Sima Taxing said to Elder Hu Sanquin beside him. Chapter 661. After nodding at Sima Taxing, Elder Hu Sanquin stood up and walked out. As Elder Hu Sanquin walked out, countless gazes around the Sky Marshal Square began to boil. Everyone knew that the long-awaited final battle was finally about to begin. Seeing the surrounding gazes and the quiet square, Elder Hu Sanquin walked to the front of the high platform and swept his gaze across all the spectating disciples. At this moment, hundreds of thousands of ancient heaven sect disciples were looking at Elder Hu Sanquin with respect. Among all the elders, Elder Hu Sanquin's reputation and status were definitely not ordinary in the ancient heaven sect. After sweeping his gaze across the entire square, Elder Hu Sanquin's gaze finally landed on Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. He said, Sima Muhan, Du Xiaofu, your final battle begins now. Boom. As Elder Hu Sanquin's voice fell, the entire square began to boil. Everyone looked at each other with anticipation. Feeling the gazes around him, Du Xiaofu slightly raised his head and looked at the densely packed figures around him. After all, he was also a young man, so he couldn't help but feel a little excited. Stinking brat, let's begin. Just as Elder Hu Sanquin's voice fell, Sima Muhan's graceful figure moved. Suddenly, a jingling sound rang out from her white wrist. As the hand's seal formed, a dazzling mysterious rune gushed out from Sima Muhan's palm. The light was dazzling, and finally, it condensed into a golden-patterned demonic leopard's shadow. Oh, the golden demonic leopard phantasm roared like a living creature. As a vast and mighty pressure descended and spread, the enormous phantasm pounced towards Du Xiaofu in a lightning-like manner as it roared like a muffled thunder. This is the golden heavenly leopard's beast ability on the heavenly beast list. I didn't expect little Muhan to have comprehended the golden heavenly leopard's beast ability to this extent. Following the appearance of the huge demonic leopard shadow, the elders and protectors on the high platform were all experienced and knowledgeable people. Immediately, their expressions changed. Beast ability? Du Xiaofu's eyes twitched slightly. At the same time, he waved his hand and formed a hand seal. A dragon's roar could faintly be heard from within his palm, and a scarlet cloud dragon's shadow condensed. The scarlet cloud dragon's beast carried a shocking might and directly charged towards the golden heavenly leopard's shadow. Bang! The two types of demonic beasts were both ranked on the heavenly beast list. As the beasts collided, a rumbling sound immediately sounded in midair. Along with the explosion of countless symbols, their auras suppressed the sky and shook one's soul. Two demonic beast shadows. And heaven and earth. The two people who had attacked in the arena stood tall and straight, but they did not move or sway. They only looked at each other, and the expression in their eyes became much more focused. The Black Cloud Scarlet Wmken. I didn't expect that brat Du Xiaofu to have so many tricks up his sleeve. On Devil's On's Mudo Heavens Lu Mu's Devilt Mu's Lu's Shadow Muhan's Luke 2, in a short instant, Sima Muhan's figure once again turned into an afterimage and directly appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. Runes flickered in his light purple eyes. A terrifying profound energy was like a storm, instantly surging with Sima Muhan as the center. Accompanied by the trembling of space, a palm print immediately condensed in front of his delicate hand. Phoenix Cry Seal. A tender shout came out from Sima Muhan's delicate mouth. The terrifying energy palm print in her hand directly smashed down towards Du Xiaofu's head. Boom! The moment the palm print appeared, a huge energy pressure immediately spread out, causing the weaker disciples in the crowd to feel their profound energy stagnate. A terrifying power spread out, causing the surrounding space to tremble as if it was a spatial tremor. The ground shook, and if it wasn't for the talisman array, it would have already cracked open. That vast and mighty power made people dumbfounded. Phoenix Cry Seal. This is one of the Manchu's top martial skills. It doesn't have any ranks. The stronger the comprehension, the stronger the power. It's a secret of the Manchu. Even among the inner sect disciples, there are very few who have the qualifications to cultivate it. Many of the surrounding spectators were stunned, and some of the weaker inner sect disciples couldn't help but speak out. As the terrifying palm print fell, Du Xiaofu's figure stood tall like a boulder. Under the pressure of that terrifying power, his body didn't move at all. His gaze was fixed on the graceful and charming figure that was flying over. Feeling that terrifying power, Du Xiaofu didn't expect Sima Muhan to be so tyrannical. She was actually able to condense such a terrifying palm print with just a raise of her hand. Whether it was speed or power, Sima Muhan's attack was impeccable. It was a perfect fusion. Du Xiaofu could even feel that the profound energy in Sima Muhan's body was exceptionally dense. It wasn't something that an ordinary person's profound energy could compare to. It was also at this moment that the ground beneath Du Xiaofu's feet shook violently. A loud roar that sounded like a dragon's roar came from his mouth. It was like the roar of a divine elephant, roar. A domineering aura swept out, looking down on everything. In a short moment, Du Xiaofu condensed a fist print. Buzz. With the sound of wind and thunder like the sound of Sanskrit, the fist imprint was accompanied by an imperceptible trajectory and fluctuation of runes. In the end, like a meteor colliding, it fiercely collided with Sima Muhan's palm imprint. Bang! A low and dull sound immediately resounded like thunder. The space seemed to be instantly distorted by the pressure. The huge roar resounded like thunder in the air. Walala, turbulent energy ripples spread out. The entire surrounding space trembled rapidly. The space ripples formed huge waves that rippled in all directions. A large number of broken runes were dazzling, like gorgeous fireworks. The terrifying energy spread out, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. It was as if a disaster had arrived. Such a terrifying fist print and palm print dissipated almost at the same time. Big Dipper Storm. A tender shout rang out as Sima Muhan's beautiful figure revolved. In that instant, runes flickered in her eyes, and from her graceful and charming figure, an exceptionally dense, profound chi burst forth. Accompanied by dazzling runes, it transformed into a gigantic energy storm. Vaguely, the energy storm was accompanied by the pressure of lightning and thunder. In an instant, it directly enveloped Du Xiaofu's body, as if he had been prepared for it. The terrifying attack that Sima Muhan had just launched was actually just a trick. Sima Muhan knew that the Phoenix Cry seal just now shouldn't be able to completely deal with Du Xiaofu. Her real goal was this attack. Walala, the terrifying energy storm swept out. The energy was vigorous, the runes surged, and the imposing aura suppressed the sky. It caused the surrounding space to distort. The terrifying power was enough to make one's hair stand on end. In the square, everyone broke out in cold sweat for Du Xiaofu. Even the elders and protectors on the high platform had their gazes focused at this moment. The energy storm swept out and enveloped the collapsed space. It spun as if it was swallowing the sky. The dazzling and endless runes suppressed the world. It was extremely terrifying, causing Du Xiaofu to be unable to move. Rock descends to the ninth heaven. Just as Du Xiaofu was engulfed by the terrifying energy storm, the golden light in his body suddenly bloomed. A pair of golden rune wings condensed on his back, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock race. It was as if a real golden-winged rock had descended. Boom! The wings spread out, powerful and domineering. A terrifying aura overflowed. The golden rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped and swept out, wanting to destroy the sky. In the terrifying storm, the wind and clouds surged, as if a divine punishment had descended from the heavens. A golden-winged rock, like a living creature, was overflowing with light. It was like a rock spreading its wings and soaring to the ninth heaven. Rumble! The two collided and entangled. The sonic boom was like a deep thunder. A series of dazzling runes gushed out, and the space seemed to be overturned. What a strong pair! The onlookers were shocked. Many elders and protectors on the elders' seats were deeply moved at this moment. The golden-winged rock is not only similar in shape, but also in spirit. Incredible, really incredible. This is hope, I finally see hope. In front of the high platform, Sima Taxing looked at the golden figure flapping its wings in the terrifying storm. His glass-like eyes were also filled with extremely violent fluctuations at this time. However, the fluctuations in Sima Taxing's eyes disappeared in a flash, and no one noticed it. Rock descends to the ninth heaven, destroy. Amidst the terrifying confrontation, a clear shout abruptly rang out. Immediately after, within the terrifying energy storm, Du Xiaofu's golden talisman wings flapped, emitting a dazzling golden light. Golden talisman runes swept out like a blazing sun. A tyrannical and fierce energy aura soared into the sky like a volcanic eruption, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. Walala, the terrifying energy storm was on the verge of collapse. In the end, it cracked under the corrosion of the domineering golden runes, and then it was finally forcibly broken. But at the same time, the golden rune wings were immediately obliterated, and Du Xiaofu's figure escaped at the same time. Walala, the runes all over the sky were shattered, and the dazzling light poured out into the sky. Countless people around were dumbfounded as they watched the gorgeous scene above the square. Under the gorgeous appearance of fireworks, everyone knew that the energy contained was as terrifying as destruction. The terrifying power made a large area of space squirm and tremble rapidly, and the earth kept rumbling. Then, everything dissipated, and the two figures fell from the sky at the same time. After taking a few steps back, they each stabilized their bodies. The space was completely silent, deathly silent. No one had thought that the two of them would cause such a huge commotion after exchanging just 2 moves. Martial Uncle Du, you can do it? The eldest miss will win. After a short silence, deafening cheers and shouts resounded throughout the square. There was no doubt that both Sima Muhan and Du Xiaofu were very popular among the disciples of the ancient Sky Sect. More importantly, the wonderful battle and strength of the two had deeply shocked all the disciples who were watching. This chapter is very difficult to write. Chapter 662. The two of them are so strong. Many of the elders and protectors on the high platform were also shocked. Seems like I've underestimated you. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and pouted. You do have the right to make me use my full strength. As soon as she finished speaking, a dazzling light surged out from Sima Muhan's slender hand. The light was dazzling and a dazzling long sword was held tightly in her hand. The talisman engravings on the sword shone as if it was alive. It attracted the energy of heaven and earth, and a mighty pressure enveloped the square. Boom! At the same time, Sima Muhan's beautiful face became serious. Talisman engravings flashed in her light purple eyes. A majestic aura that was not inferior to Si Ruofeng and Ji Aoming's aura spread out like a sonic bomb. It made people's hearts tremble. The terrifying energy storm accompanied by the energy of heaven and earth was like a hurricane. It was so magnificent that it made people tremble. And all of this was caused by Sima Muhan's Xian Qi and the extraordinary sword in her hand. Martial King Nirvana Realm. Underworld Phoenix Sword, high-grade Taoist artifact. At this moment, the whole square was shocked. Countless eyes were trembling. Sima Muhan's cultivation had reached the Martial King Nirvana realm. Looking at Sima Muhan's age, an 18 or 19-year-old Nirvana realm cultivator could only be described as a demon. The Underworld Phoenix Sword was a famous high-grade Taoist artifact in Gudian Manchu. It was rumored that the Underworld Phoenix Sword was made from the remains of the strong Phoenix race. It was accompanied by the power of the beast. Among all the high-grade Taoist artifacts, it was a king-like existence. This is Junior Muhan's true strength. It seems like she didn't use her full strength back then. In the crowd in the square, Ji Aoming looked at the square. His eyes were filled with surprise and helplessness. It seems like the outcome is about to be decided. Du Xiaofu should be defeated. He won't be embarrassed. In the elders' seats, many elders and protectors were shocked. They already knew the outcome of the battle. No matter how strong Du Xiaofu was, how could he be compared to Sima Muhan? That demonic girl was the best of both families. Among the same generation, how many people could be compared to her? At this moment, Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face also became serious. His clear eyes revealed a hint of worry. This is troublesome. Martial King Nirvana Realm. In the plaza, Du Xiaofu was facing the energy storm that was spreading out from Sima Muhan's graceful body, and had to envelop the golden profound qi to resist it. Du Xiaofu could only smile bitterly at Sima Muhan, who was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm. He had been unable to detect Sima Muhan's true cultivation, but the cultivation of Martial King Nirvana realm was definitely beyond Du Xiaofu's expectation. With such cultivation coupled with Sima Muhan's strength, it was enough to compete with Yin Mochen. I know you haven't used your full strength. Now use your full strength. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu. She shook the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix Sword in her hand and channeled the energy of heaven and earth. It was powerful. Not a weak doctrine weapon. Not a bad sword. Looking at the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix Sword in Sima Muhan's hand, Du Xiaofu's eyes moved slightly. His expression turned solemn, and a green-gold light burst out from his hand. Boom! Suddenly, the sky shook, and the energy of heaven and earth surged and gathered. The green-gold light faded, and a green-gold longsword appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand. A domineering aura filled the air, and a clanging sound was heard. The green-gold longsword looked ancient, but it was very agile. The arc of the sword was elegant, and the green-gold light was shining. The runes were flowing, and it was natural. What a powerful sword. It's definitely not weaker than the Hongming Heavenly Phoenix Sword. When the tyrant shadow appeared in Du Xiaofu's hand, the gazes of the elders and protectors on the high platform changed. With the eyesight and knowledge of the elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect, the domineering aura in the tyrant shadow could not escape their prying eyes. With the tyrant shadow in hand, Du Xiaofu's body was enveloped in a golden halo. At this moment, the aura of the complete martial lord realm, which was close to the peak, was completely released. Waves of profound qi rippled, and the tyrant shadow channeled the energy of heaven and earth. The runes spread, and the sky started to tremble. Looking at the tyrant shadow in Du Xiaofu's hands, Sima Muhan's light purple rune eyes rippled. Her beautiful eyes tightly stared at Du Xiaofu, her eyelashes slightly raised, and she said, "As expected, you haven't used your full strength. Then let's see if you can receive my Seven Heavens Shadow Sword. You'll know after you try." Du Xiaofu's eyes turned into golden runes, and he was no longer careless. Sima Muhan's strength was beyond his imagination. He had to go all out against Sima Muhan, who was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, Sima Muhan moved. Her graceful and seductive figure flashed, and her figures swept out. With an extremely mysterious arc and lightning speed, the rainbow underworld heavenly phoenix sword in her hand shook, and a sword light swept towards Du Xiaofu's lower abdomen. Pointing to the heavens, one of the first sword techniques of the 7 heavenly shadow sword. This is the ultimate skill of that little girl Muha's grandmother. It is said that it is definitely not below the Bright Saint sword manual of our ancient heaven sect. On the high platform, seeing Sima Muhan's move, Elder Hao Zongwei immediately exclaimed. At this moment, the elders and protectors' gazes immediately became nervous for Du Xiaofu. Elder Gu Qingyang and Yu Wanli were no exception, and their gazes focused slightly. At this moment, Du Xiaofu gazed into the distance as he watched the sword light sweeping towards him. His feet floated in the air, and his movements were unpredictable. His arms slightly expanded, and his posture was completely different from ordinary martial arts and sword techniques. However, intentionally or unintentionally, he directly avoided the sword light in front of his lower abdomen. At the same time, Du Xiaofu's posture changed again, and he unleashed a sword technique. Several sword lights swept out, and immediately wrapped around Sima Muhan's sword move. Sima Muhan immediately felt that her sword light was wrapped by Du Xiaofu's sword light. Suddenly, there seemed to be a special magic in the sword light, which directly resisted and obliterated the terrifying energy on Sima Muhan's sword light. It was as if the sword light had plunged into a quagmire, and it could not affect the opponent at all. At this moment, as the sword light in Du Xiaofu's hand swept out, Sima Taxing's glass-like eyes suddenly changed color. Elder Gu Qingyang's clear eyes, which were filled with worry, were also filled with doubt. This seems to be that flower parting willow in Master's Bright Saint Sword Manual. How long has it been since junior brother mastered it? Yu Wanli was shocked and stunned. What junior brother use turned out to be the Bright Saint Sword Manual that Master asked him to practice a few days ago. When Elder Gu Qingyang asked Yu Wanli to practice the Bright Saint Sword Manual, Yu Wanli had not succeeded in practicing it at all in the past few decades. It was said that in the entire ancient sky sect, the number of people who could practice the Bright Saint Sword Manual would definitely not exceed the number of 1 and 5 fingers. It could be imagined how difficult it was to practice the Bright Saint Sword Manual. You actually practiced the sword technique of the Bright Saint Sword Manual? Sima Muhan's charming face changed slightly in surprise. It seemed that she had also dabbled in the Bright Saint Sword Manual. The long sword in her hand suddenly changed, and the sword move suddenly changed. A dazzling rune erupted, and the sword tip drew a strange arc in the void. It immediately broke free from the suppression, and a sword light took advantage of the situation to point directly at Du Xiaofu's chest. What an ingenious sword technique! Du Xiaofu's eyes were filled with admiration. Sima Muhan did not use too much qi just now. She just relied on the ingenuity of her sword technique to break free from the suppression. Du Xiaofu also seemed to understand the changes in Sima Muhan's sword technique. The sword tip immediately changed, and the sword tip continuously moved 3 times. Each point was directly in front of Sima Muhan's sword tip. Every time the sword tip moved slightly, it was able to erupt with beautiful runes. At this moment, Du Xiaofu's power was clearly inferior to Sima Muhan's, but for some unknown reason, the 3 points of his sword tipped directly and strangely dissolved Sima Muhan's sword. This is the Yang Pass 3 stacks of the Bright Saint Sword Manual. Du Xiaofu, that brat, mastered the Bright Saint Sword Manual. At the elders' seats, there was finally an elder who could not help but be shocked. One must know how difficult it was to master the Bright Saint Sword Manual. Sima Muhan also focused her gaze. The treasured sword in her hand continuously changed. The sword tip trembled, sometimes swinging the sword straight, sometimes slicing horizontally, sometimes lifting the sword upwards. They all seemed to be simple sword techniques, but they seemed to contain the great Tao. One after another, the endless sword aura enveloped Du Xiaofu. The sword tip changed unpredictably, causing countless gazes to tremble. Among the spectators, how many of them had the confidence to take on such a terrifying sword technique? Du Xiaofu focused, and the sword aura in his hand swept out. One after another, the sword aura drew a mysterious arc in the vacuum. The green-gold brilliance was extremely bright, as though it was about to drown Du Xiaofu. The sound of wind and thunder resounded, and the sword aura flashed, causing the clanging sounds to ring out. Walala, rays of sword light shot out from the tyrannical shadow sword, causing the space to tremble. Layers of sword light bloomed one after another, as if it could connect with the energy of heaven and earth. Just the pure sword technique contained a great amount of power. Just by relying on the sword technique, it could release a great power and connect with the energy of heaven and earth. Du Xiaofu's cultivation was obviously not as high as Sima Muhan's. But at this moment, in the battle of sword techniques, he was able to overcome 1,000 caddies with 4 ounces. He used softness to overcome strength and resisted Sima Muhan's suppression. He was even able to suppress Sima Muhan. This battle of sword techniques had even caused everyone to overlook the extremely abnormal level of cultivation that the two of them possessed, as well as the dense and boundless profound energy that they possessed. It was as if this was just a simple battle of sword techniques. Everyone's gazes were involuntarily focused on the two of them, as both of them were using unpredictable sword techniques. The young man and woman in the field were like 2 grandmasters of sword techniques. Their moves were definitely not as simple as simple sword techniques. Chapter 663. Don't look into that sword technique. It will hurt your mind and soul. Some people looked into it carefully and immediately felt a terrifying power enveloping them. Those with lower cultivation immediately spat out blood and their faces turned pale. Sword intent can hurt people. These 2 people are too scary. Shock surged in the eyes of an elegant and handsome man among the spectators. Soon after, he could not help but sigh as he shook his head and said, just based on this point alone, I am really inferior to them. I did not suffer any injustice in the giant rock space. On the high platform, the expressions of all the elders and protectors changed. All of them were dumbfounded. Sima Taxing Xing sat upright and subconsciously held the armchair tightly. His glass-like eyes were filled with turbulent waves as he stared at the field. At this moment, Elder Gu Qingyang, who was sitting next to Sima Taxing Xing, was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. This kid, how is it possible? How is it possible? Elder Gu Qingyang was shocked to find that the bright Saint Sword manual that he had practiced for hundreds of years was obviously different from the sword technique that Du Xiaofu was using. They were clearly the same sword technique from the bright Saint Sword manual, but after careful observation, the sword technique that Du Xiaofu was using was closer to returning to nature. Whoosh whoosh, in Sima Muhan's light purple eyes, the expression in his eyes became more and more serious. The sword light in his hand overlapped. The sword light overflowed into the sky, and the light of the runes covered the space. Du Xiaofu's figure leaped, and he used the wave-treading carefree steps. He was as agile as a god and unpredictable. Du Xiaofu's tyrannical shadow sword flashed. The sword light contained the words seal, turn, trap, lead, poke, entangle, and attack. The dazzling azure gold runes bloomed. It was like the golden feathers of a golden-winged rock. Together with the power of the sword technique, the aura was even more domineering and terrifying. The sword technique was continuous and endless. In the entire field, only the 2 swords could be seen turning into countless sword lights. The rainbow underworld sky phoenix sword was like a phoenix spreading its wings. It was magnificent and beautiful. Tyrannical shadow was like a spirit python, a flood dragon soaring into the sky, and a great rock shaking the sky. Both of their sword moves were extremely profound and could communicate with the energy of heaven and earth. At this moment, the 2 of them were fighting like 2 grandmasters of sword skills, causing the elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect to exclaim in admiration. Both of them have comprehended heavenly talent like this. They can be called monsters. Elder Hao Zongwei's expression changed. At this moment, he wasn't thinking about the Tao treasure and pills that he might lose. Instead, he was thinking about the entire ancient heaven sect. 2 monstrous geniuses from my ancient heaven sect. This is my ancient heaven sect's fortune. Elder Hu Sangkuan nodded. His grayish-white beard moved slightly, and his face was filled with shock. The seventh sword, Heavenly Sword Phoenix Shadow. Under the layers of sword shadows, Sima Muhan's clear and melodious shout rang out. The dazzling runes on the rainbow underworld Heavenly Phoenix sword in her hands swept out, finally condensing into a sword tide that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Within the sword tide, a terrifying aura whistled, and a huge phantom of a phoenix could be vaguely seen within it. The huge phantom of a phoenix was condensed from the sword light, giving people an incomparably demonic feeling. A terrifying pressure, accompanied by the pressure of the Phoenix clan, descended from the sky. The Phoenix clan was a terrifying existence that was ranked at the top of the heavenly beast list. They were terrifying demonic beasts that could be compared to dragons. They were known as the king of birds, and no one dared to disobey their orders. What a terrifying sword move! Miss Muhan's strength is actually so terrifying. Under the terrifying sword tide, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire Tianwu Square began to become chaotic, and many shocked voices could be heard. Gee! Within the terrifying sword tide, the faint cry of a phoenix could be heard, as if a real phoenix was about to spread its wings and fly out. Then, a terrifying sword intent, accompanied by an earth-shattering sword wave, swept towards Du Xiaofu like lightning. At this moment, Elder Gu Qingyang and the others on the high platform also narrowed their eyes, waiting with full concentration. There were faint fluctuations of profound qi around their bodies. It was likely that as long as Du Xiaofu was unable to hold on, Elder Gu Qingyang would immediately intervene. Under such a terrifying sword tide, Elder Gu Qingyang did not have much confidence in Du Xiaofu. After all, such a terrifying power was too strong. Du Xiaofu looked at the terrifying sword tide, which arrived in front of him in an instant. Am I going to lose in the end? Layers upon layers of sword tide instantly enveloped Du Xiaofu. Under countless gazes, Du Xiaofu's figure was completely enveloped by the sword light, causing sighs to ring out from the surrounding square. However, at the same time, Du Xiaofu, who had just been enveloped by the sword tide, shot out the sword light in his hand at the same time. Sacred Sword Roar. The sword light swept out from Du Xiaofu's tyrannical shadow. He waved his sword and slashed out. A series of complex and mysterious sword moves finally gathered together, but it was only a simple slash. When the sword slashed out, an azure gold brilliance shone brightly. The sword light instantly spread out with lightning speed. It was a simple slash, but at this moment, it seemed to contain the power to move mountains and seas. It was enough to shake mountains and rivers, crack mountains and crack the earth, and destroy everything. Gee! When the sword light appeared, it shone with boundless golden light. Layers upon layers of light bloomed, and dazzling azure gold talisman patterns bloomed. The aura was domineering and terrifying. The brilliance of the sword light poured down on heaven and earth. It was like a dragon soaring into the sky, like a rock soaring into the sky. Under the brilliance, there was a terrifying and domineering destructive energy hidden. Under countless shocked gazes, Du Xiaofu's sword directly collided with Sima Muhan's sword tide, and slashed towards the phoenix-like sword light. Chi-la-la, the sword lights collided with each other, and a long spatial ripple collapsed in succession, but it was soundless and soundless. But it was this kind of silence, with only the flickering of light, that was even more shocking. Sacred Sword Roar. I didn't expect that guy to have comprehended it to such a degree. The entire square was dumbfounded. There was a deathly silence. Countless gazes could feel that the two terrifying powers were in a stalemate. On the high platform, Elder Gu Qingyang's clear eyes were already filled with shock. Just when the two sword lights couldn't hold on any longer, the golden eyes on Du Xiaofu's face shone with a golden light. Talisman patterns flashed, as if a golden-winged rock was about to spread its wings and fly out. Boom! The golden light in Du Xiaofu's eyes surged, sharp and frightening. Around Du Xiaofu's body, an expanse of golden light flickered like a rising sun. An overbearing and fierce aura suddenly intensified and swept out from within his body. A pair of talisman-inscribed wings suddenly condensed and moved on his back. Majestic light suffused the air, and he was like a rock that flapped its wings and soared through the 9 heavens. Tyrannical shadow transformation. The blade of the tyrant shadow transformed into layers of chain horns, and dazzling azure gold talisman patterns blossomed, instantly transforming into an azure gold sword whip separated from the blade of the sword. A mighty pressure intensified, channeling the energy of heaven and earth, nimble and bewitching, dazzling and dazzling. Chi-La, the sword light changed, accompanied by the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. At an unbelievable angle, it directly landed on the sword light phoenix shadow. The domineering power caused the surrounding space to tremble. Ka-ka, the huge sword shadow phoenix shadow seemed to be suppressed by some kind of force. After a stalemate for half a minute, it finally began to crack and shatter, turning into countless broken sword light talisman patterns. Du Xiaofu's azure gold sword whip also began to spin. The light was obliterated and dimmed. What terrifying people! The two terrifying sword moves collided. In the end, it seemed that they were evenly matched. The surrounding square suddenly burst into an uproar. What a powerful Du Xiaofu! It's really beyond my expectations. On the high platform, many elders and protectors originally thought that Du Xiaofu would be unable to resist. Who would have thought that Du Xiaofu would be able to resist Sima Muhan's terrifying sword in the end? Ah! Elder Gu Qingyang laughed. His tensed expression relaxed. After the shock in his eyes, it was immediately replaced by ecstasy. Elder Gu Qingyang clearly knew that Du Xiaofu's comprehension of the holy sword roar was something that even he might not be able to match. His disciple, Du Xiaofu, had only cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual for a few days. However, he had cultivated it for hundreds of years. Talent. What kind of talent did he have to be able to comprehend it so quickly? Elder Gu Qingyang knew that this time, he had really accepted a good disciple. That was the holy sword roar from the Bright Saint Sword Manual, right? It seems to have added the aura of the golden-winged rock. That Du Xiaofu must have only just started cultivating the Bright Saint Sword Manual. His comprehension is so strong. His talent is terrifying. He can be called a monster. Hao Zhongwei, Hu Songken, Yan Mingze and the other elders could not help but exclaim. Martial uncle, how long has Du Xiaofu cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual? On the high platform, Sima Taxing turned around and asked Elder Gu Qingyang seriously. Just half a month. He has only cultivated the Bright Saint Sword Manual for less than 10 days. Elder Gu Qingyang replied with a smile in his eyes. Before entering the giant rock space, he had given the Bright Saint Sword Manual to Du Xiaofu to cultivate. Up until now, it had only been half a month. Adding the 7 days that Du Xiaofu had spent in the giant rock space, Du Xiaofu had only cultivated the giant rock space for less than 10 days. This guy, did he really not cultivate the Bright Saint Sword Manual before? He is a monster. Hearing Elder Gu Qingyang's words, the surrounding elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect were completely shocked. Less than 10 days. Sima Taxing Star said faintly as a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 664. The eyes on the high platform were filled with astonishment. For the elders and protectors of the ancient heaven sect present, they naturally knew in their hearts that Sima Muhan was at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm, while Du Xiaofu was only at the complete Martial Lord realm. There was a huge gap. The two of them had the same high-grade Dao artifact. Although Du Xiaofu's sword seemed to be more extraordinary, Du Xiaofu had relied on the sword technique from the Bright Saint Sword Manual to block Sima Muhan's 7 Sky Shadow Sword. Therefore, in terms of sword technique, he had already surpassed Sima Muhan. Du Xiaofu had only comprehended the Bright Saint Sword Manual for half a month. How terrifying was this talent? It was definitely a monstrous talent. It seems like Muhan is going to use her full strength. She can only win if she uses her full strength. Du Xiaofu is really strong. However, compared to Muhan, she is still incomparable. An elder sighed softly. Hearing these elders' words, Elder Gu Qingyang, who had always been protective of his children, didn't say anything. It seemed like he couldn't refute anything. Is this big brother's true strength? It's too terrifying. At the front of the crowd, Judge Hao's fat face was filled with shock. Too strong, Mo Wen, Running Bull, Mu Jiajia, Xiao Yingmeng and the others looked at each other and sighed in their hearts. From now on, they all knew that the purple-robed youth in the square was someone they couldn't compare to anymore. He was already way ahead. You are very strong. I will stop looking down on you. From now on, I will treat you as my true opponent. Sima Muhan's beautiful figure stepped into the air. A light breeze blew in the sky, and the accessories on her wrist made a crisp sound. Under the brocade dress, her body was wrapped in a charming manner, and there was a hint of charm in her cuteness. I heard that you have 3 unique skills: sword art, pulse spirit, and martial pulse spirit. Is it time for pulse spirit next? Du Xiaofu's eyes, which were glowing with golden light, looked at Sima Muhan in shock. Just now, Sima Muhan's terrifying swordsmanship, if it wasn't for the bright Saint Sword manual that he cultivated, he was afraid that it would really be difficult to defend against it. My meridian spirit is not an ordinary meridian spirit. I hope you can still resist it. Sima Muhan looked at Du Xiaofu and formed a hand seal. The mysterious runes on the talisman flickered, and the mysterious runes on the talisman erupted. A huge grass-shaped object condensed in front of her. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent. The grass was shaped like a mushroom, as if it was real. Waves of terrifying pressure descended. As soon as it appeared, everyone's eyes trembled. Their meridians and souls trembled in fear. With the appearance of that thing that looked like a mushroom, the profound energy in everyone's body was completely suppressed. Some of the weaker onlookers even felt that their vitality was being sucked out. Heavens, the young Mrs. Meridian Spirit is not a demonic beast, but a blade of grass. Earth Meridian Spirit, that's the legendary Earth Meridian Spirit. The power of a blade of grass is actually stronger than a demonic beast on the heavenly beast list. What kind of existence is that? The onlookers in the square burst out in shock. At this moment, the meridian spirit that Sima Muhan activated was actually not a demonic beast's shadow, but a blade of grass. However, the power of that blade of grass was not inferior to the demonic beast's meridian spirit on the heavenly beast list. The Earth Vein Soul, the number of experts in my ancient sky sect who have had such a fortuitous encounter can be counted on one hand. Among the younger generation of disciples, there are even fewer who have such a fortuitous encounter. Only Muha has such a fortuitous encounter. On the high platform, the eyes of all the elders and protectors trembled. There was even envy in their eyes. To them, they were very clear about the concept of possessing an Earth Meridian Spirit. It was an existence that surpassed the Beast Meridian Spirit. The Undead Grass Meridian Spirit is also a king-like existence in the Earth Meridian Spirit. Little Muhan is really lucky. Some of the elders were shocked. Sima Muhan's Meridian Spirit was the Undead Grass, which was an extremely terrifying existence. It would be difficult to find a second person in the entire central continent who could possess the Undead Grass as a Meridian Spirit. What a strong Meridian Spirit, it's actually a blade of grass. Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows at this moment. Facing Sima Muhan's grass-shaped Meridian Spirit, it was not strange. His own Meridian Spirit was a mountain. However, Du Xiaofu was also shocked by the terrifying pressure from the grass-shaped Meridian Spirit. That Meridian Spirit was extraordinary and extremely terrifying. Sima Muhan stood in the air, her seductive figure wrapped in a long brocade dress. Her eyes were covered in runes, and a terrifying pressure spread out from the grass-shaped Meridian Spirit in front of her. Cheech, in a short moment, as the Undead Grass Meridian Spirit condensed, it immediately turned into an arc of light and swept towards Du Xiaofu. Sigh, I wonder what kind of demonic beast Du Xiaofu's Meridian Spirit is. No matter how strong it is, it can't be compared with the Undead Grass. How can a Beast Meridian Spirit be compared with an Earth Meridian Spirit? On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were sure that Du Xiaofu was going to be defeated this time. However, at this moment, none of the elders and protectors felt that Du Xiaofu was weak. How many of the younger generation disciples could make Sima Muhan activate the Earth Meridian Spirit? One had to know that Du Xiaofu was only at the complete martial marquis realm. If he was at the Nirvana realm like Sima Muhan, how terrifying would that be? Now, even if Du Xiaofu was defeated, he would only be defeated below the innate realm. How many people could have such a terrifying meridian spirit like the Earth Meridian Spirit? That's the legendary Earth Meridian Spirit. I wonder if the president can resist it. At the front of the crowd, Qiao Yingming frowned, her eyes fixed on the field. Boom, the field trembled, and the sound of wind and thunder resounded. On Sima Muhan's meridian spirit, the grass-shaped meridian spirit appeared in front of Du Xiaofu in an instant. Circles of dazzling, mysterious runes spread out from the grass-shaped meridian spirit. The runes were densely packed, like a lingering divine light, and the pressure was rolling, suppressing forward. The terrifying power of the grass-shaped meridian spirit could destroy everything. It was so terrifying that it made people tremble with fear. Under the countless gazes around the field, Du Xiaofu moved under the suppression of the grass-shaped meridian spirit. Suddenly, there was a dazzling, mysterious rune behind him. A sudden, overbearing aura shook the grass-shaped meridian spirit, which had just descended, and it also trembled. At this moment, Sima Muhan, who was not far away, seemed to have felt something, and her rune eyes rippled. That's, in a short moment, under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of eyes, a golden five-fingered mountain phantom spread out behind Du Xiaofu. The golden mountain phantom grew and evolved behind him, as if it was given life. Buzz. The five-fingered mountain phantom was filled with golden light, and its sound was like the sound of wind and thunder. Dense spiritual energy spread out, communicating with the energy of heaven and earth, and a terrifying power spread out in the face of the grass-shaped meridian spirit. The five-fingered mountain phantom expanded as if it was real. It was like a king that could not be bullied, and its pressure was rolling, and its aura was like a long rainbow. The multicolored light exploded, and the grass-shaped meridian spirit was directly pushed back. The golden five-fingered mountain phantom looked down at the defeated grass-shaped meridian spirit with the aura of a king. It was constantly growing and evolving, and it could not be provoked at this moment. On the high platform, Sima Taxing's glass-like eyes suddenly flickered, and he could not help but stand up. Oh my God, the meridian spirit! Du Xiaofu also has the meridian spirit. 2 meridian spirits. God is really blessing our ancient heaven sect. After a short moment of shock, on the high platform, a large number of elders and protectors stood up one after another, their eyes trembling. On the contrary, Elder Gu Qingyang's face was filled with astonishment at this time. His clear eyes seemed to be absent-minded, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. His jaw was wide open, and he couldn't close his mouth. Boom! The mountain phantom and the grass of immortality meridian spirit confronted each other. Du Xiaofu's figure merged into the mountain phantom, and golden runes flashed and shuttled, resisting the grass of immortality. The five-fingered mountain phantom was like a supreme being, continuously colliding with the grass of immortality. In terms of the strength of Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, of course, Sima Muhan was much stronger. However, in terms of the power of the meridian spirit itself, it was obvious that the five-fingered mountain phantom was stronger. Du Xiaofu relied on the power of the five-fingered mountain phantom to suppress the grass of immortality, as if it could crush and suppress all things in the world. Rumble! The king-like grass of immortality was incomparably powerful, and its aura was overwhelming. However, at this moment, the glittering mountain phantom was like a supreme being, and it could not be provoked or resisted. The grass of immortality was gradually suppressed by the mountain phantom. The 2 meridian spirits confronted each other, and the terrifying aura fluctuations made it difficult for the surrounding ancient heaven sect disciples to breathe, and the qi in their bodies was blocked. Oh my God, what kind of meridian spirit is that? The mountain phantom is also an earth meridian spirit. What a terrifying aura! It seems to be suppressing the soul, qi, and bloodline. The surrounding disciples trembled. This scene was beyond everyone's expectations. This scene, especially for Du Xiaofu's supporters, made them even more excited and excited. I didn't expect you to also have an earth meridian spirit. You really surprise me time and time again. It seems that I can only defeat you with my full strength. The crisp words came out of Sima Muhan's mouth. When the last word fell, her graceful and alluring body still landed on the grass of immortality. Mysterious runes connected with the grass of immortality, and dazzling light poured down into the sky. At the same time, purple light appeared in Sima Muhan's eyes, which were shining with runes, again. In a short time, her eyes turned into a strange crystal-clear purple. Boom! At this moment, the surrounding space trembled for no reason, and a terrifying invisible pressure spread across this part of the world. At this moment, within Sima Muhan's graceful body, his aura suddenly rose to its peak. Today's update is complete. Originally, I wanted to add more chapters to repay the debt, but these chapters are really difficult to write. It's difficult to write more chapters. Lil, you will definitely make up for the chapters that I owe you in the next 2 days. Chapter 665. A vigorous aura spread out from Sima Muha's body. The mighty aura swept across the sky and connected with the immortal grass. The mysterious runes on the talisman filled the sky, and a supreme pressure descended upon the world. As this mighty life force spread out, the grass of immortality's phantom suddenly shone brightly. Its power suddenly rose to the peak. Rumble! At this moment, the wind and clouds were surging in the sky above the square, accompanied by the faint sound of wind and thunder. Pucci! Around the square, the disciples with lower cultivations spat out mouthfuls of blood. Their faces were pale. It was as if the life force in their bodies was being sucked out. The pressure was irresistible. Greenwood Martial Vein, Human Emperor Heavenly Bearing, gathering the soul of the immortal grass vein in one body, Muha is a monster. Little Muhan's Greenwood Vein and Blood Vein are fused. Human Emperor talent is enough to look down on her peers. On the high platform in the square, all the elders of the ancient heaven sect were stunned. Renhuang's talent was frightening. He was already ahead of his peers by a large margin. Little Muhan's talent is too strong. On Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face, his clear eyes were also filled with shock. In the entire Central Plains, there were only a handful of talented Renhuangs at the Renhuang realm. Any Renhuang genius was a peerless cultivator in the Zhongzhou state. It could be said that any human emperor talent would not have any accidents. They could grow into a peerless expert in the future. Human Emperor Heavenly Talent, Undying Grass Vein Soul, Junior Sister Muha is a monster. In the entire ancient heaven sect, other than that true little monster and that terrifying lord, no one else can compare. In a corner of the square, Inmochen's eyes were shining. He looked at the sky above the square with shock. What a strong pressure. I can't resist it. Senior Sister Muhan is too strong. I'm afraid Uncle Master Du will be suppressed. Uncle Master Du is already very strong. Even if he lost to Senior Sister Muhan, no one in the Manchu can compare to him. The whole square was shocked. At this moment, all the Manchu disciples were in a daze. Boom! On the grass of immortality, the talisman engravings were dazzling. Sima Muhan's expression changed. Stepping on the grass of immortality, her body was full of vitality. Divine light covered her, making her look like an immortal. At this moment, under the double suppression of the grass of immortality vein phantom and Sima Muhan's Greenwood Martial Vein, Du Xiaofu's golden five-fingered mountain phantom was finally suppressed. Terrifying symbols erupted, and rumbling sounds rang out incessantly, shaking the surroundings. Among those of the same generation, there was already no one who could step foot here. Sima Muhan suppressed him with a terrifying aura. The previous exchange of sword techniques between the two of them was unpredictable. However, the current confrontation was only about suppression. They did not use too many techniques, only absolute suppression. That kid Du Xiaofu is really strong. I didn't expect him to be so terrifying. He's only at the Martial Lord realm, but he can actually resist Muhan until now. He's really born strong, and his talent is enough to look down on the central region. On the high platform, Elder Hao Zhongwei exclaimed in shock. Even if Du Xiaofu was going to be defeated now, it had already proved how terrifying it was. After all, Sima Muhan's cultivation was now at the Nirvana realm of the Martial King realm, and she was still forced to use all her strength. Rumble! The grass of immortality and Sima Muhan kept suppressing. It was like a divine light shrouding the world. The light was dazzling, like a bright moon in the sky. Terrifying and powerful, the aura was monstrous, like an immortal suppressing a demon. The golden mountain phantom was constantly being suppressed and collided, bursting out a string of golden light. The golden symbols seemed to have evolved and bloomed, causing the sky above the square to be dazzling. Ka. In the end, the golden mountain phantom was finally unable to resist. It was suppressed by the strong force until it cracked continuously. After a few minutes, it began to crack more and more. Withdraw, Du Xiaofu shouted. He knew that he could no longer resist. If the phantom was seriously injured, he would be in a worse state. He could only withdraw the phantom first. Under that terrifying pressure, Du Xiaofu felt that if he could break through to the initial stage of the martial king realm, he would be able to resist Sima Muhan by relying on the five-finger mountain phantom vein soul. However, he was only at the peak of the martial marquis realm. The phantom of the golden five-finger mountain phantom was withdrawn. Under the dazzling light of the runes, Du Xiaofu's figure appeared. A mouthful of blood was spat out from Du Xiaofu's mouth. He was greatly affected. Without the phantom's resistance, the terrifying grass of immortality and the greenwood martial vein's pressure completely shrouded Du Xiaofu's body. Is Martial Uncle Du still going to lose? The phantom has been withdrawn. Senior Sister Muhan is too powerful. Du Xiaofu is still a little short. No matter who wins or loses, it is enough to prove that both of them are monsters. What a powerful and terrifying two people. They are both young, but their strength is so terrifying. Two monsters. As Du Xiaofu's golden mountain phantom was withdrawn, all the disciples of the ancient sky sect in the Tianwu Square held their breaths and waited. Once again, there was a shocking discussion. In the midst of the discussion, everyone could only sigh and feel regret. But at this moment, who would still think that Du Xiaofu was not strong enough? They could only feel deeply shocked by the confrontation between the two of them. Among the peers of the ancient sky sect, who could be compared with these two terrifying fellows? Although he lost in the Du Xiaofu, he is not inferior to Mu Ha's girl. Although he lost, he still won. On the high platform, an elder gave Du Xiaofu such a high evaluation. Although he had lost, it was still a victory. At this point in the fierce battle, Du Xiaofu could not continue to fight against Sima Muhan. The impact of the huge force made his mind dizzy, and his body felt like it was about to be shattered. Especially under the pressure of the surging vitality, a vast and ancient aura spread out, as if it wanted to devour all the vitality in Du Xiaofu's body. You lost! Sima Muhan shouted slightly. The mysterious runes on the surface of her body bloomed and surged. The shadow of the immortal grass directly enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. Under the greenwood martial vein, vitality was surging. No, I haven't lost yet. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Du Xiaofu's pale face. At this moment, when he could no longer resist, Du Xiaofu felt a familiar and strange aura. That familiar yet mysterious aura had been hibernating in his body all this time. But at this moment, Du Xiaofu felt that the mysterious aura began to awaken in his body under the stimulation of Sima Muhan's surging vitality. Chilala. As Du Xiaofu's voice fell, his body began to emit mysterious rays of light. A magical ray of light jumped out, tightly connecting with his meridians and blood vessels. These mysterious lights crisscrossed on the surface of Du Xiaofu's body. When they finally condensed together, they turned into a light net and directly covered Du Xiaofu. A terrifying aura spread out and swept across the sky. The ancient pressure that spread out from the mysterious light net caused the surrounding disciples in the square to tremble in an instant. Their bodies involuntarily prostrated themselves on the ground as if they were facing a supreme being that they could not resist. Under this pressure, the world around the square was roaring. The aura could swallow mountains and rivers, peerless in the sky. On the high platform elder's seat, Sima Taxing suddenly saw the mysterious light net on Du Xiaofu's body. On his heroic face, his glass-like eyes suddenly changed. Oh my God, this is, on the high platform elder's seat, all the elders and protectors of the ancient sky sect couldn't help but tremble. Then, all the elders and protectors stood together and stared at the square. Their eyes seemed to be about to pop out of their sockets. At this time, Elder Gu Qingyang's ruddy face suddenly changed again. He stared at the mysterious light net around Du Xiaofu's body. His eyes trembled as he muttered in shock, "Martial Vein Spirit Seal, this is a Martial Vein Spirit Seal. Martial Vein Spirit Seal, it's a Martial Vein Spirit Seal." Sima Tashing slightly clenched his fists and his robe fluttered. After the shock, his handsome face was filled with a smile. Rumble. At this moment, the wind and clouds surged in the sky. Dark clouds gathered for no reason. Lightning flashed and thunder roared faintly. The pressure made all the disciples in the square tremble. The president still has a trump card. The president hasn't lost yet. Mao Wen, Beniyu, Mu Jiajia, Xiao Yingmeng, Hao Bian, Gu Zhangyu, and the others all clenched their fists. Their bodies trembled and their eyes flickered. On the square, Du Xiaofu's golden eyes turned into thunder and lightning. It was as if there were two terrifying thunderballs in his eyes. Du Xiaofu's body was covered by the mysterious light net. Dazzling lightning radiance burst out from his body as a terrifying and domineering aura violently spread out, causing the surrounding space to rumble. Rumble. Under the terrifying pressure, the entire Sky Marshal Square trembled violently at this moment. A large space wave swept out. This scene was extremely terrifying. Not only did it startle the surrounding disciples of the ancient heaven sect, but even Sima Muhan was moved. Her eyes, which were covered with azure light, kept blinking. At this moment, Sima Muhan also didn't expect that Du Xiaofu would still have such a terrifying method. Even in her maternal grandmother's house, although there were only 2 or 3 people among her cousins who could suppress her, in terms of age, there was a huge gap between them. Among those of the same age, no one in her maternal grandmother's family could compete with her. Chapter 666. Feeling Du Xiaofu's terrifying aura, Sima Muhan's eyes, which were covered by the green light, were filled with shock. Sima Muhan could feel that Du Xiaofu's terrifying aura was majestic and desolate. It was not to be challenged. Under that terrifying aura, it was as if something terrifying was awakening in Du Xiaofu's body. It made her feel uneasy. That kind of uneasiness was definitely something she had never felt before. It was as if she was facing an awakening supreme being. Break. Lightning flashed in Du Xiaofu's eyes and the surrounding area was overflowing with electricity. Du Xiaofu shouted and punched out, directly blasting the grass of immortality's shadow in front of him. In front of Du Xiaofu's fist, electric light overflowed in all directions, domineering and destructive. With an unstoppable force, he blasted the illusory image of the immortal grass. Oh my God, Du Xiaofu also has a hidden martial vein in his body. That martial vein seems to be awakening on its own. It's extraordinary. On the high platform, all the elders were shocked. He destroyed the grass of immortality with one punch. How shocking was that? Sima Muhan spat out a mouthful of blood, but his expression and posture were still like that of an immortal. His entire body was wrapped in green light, like a bright moon, transcending the mortal world. Immortal subduing demon. Boom! A palm print was waved out. Sima Muha's palm print was wrapped in a cyan light. Wherever the palm print passed, the space became barren, destroying everything. Even the air was completely destroyed. Break! Du Xiaofu shouted. He raised his palm and a domineering aura exploded. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The lightning in the surroundings connected together like a sea of lightning, forming a huge sun. Du Xiaofu soared into the sky like a thunder god descending to the world. Boom! Their palms collided and emitted a bright light. The green light was dazzling and the lightning flashed. They were in a stalemate again. There were many screams in the square. At this moment, under the pressure of Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan, those with lower strength, under that unstoppable and terrifying pressure, Meridian Spirit and Martial Vein were continuously suppressed, unable to resist. On the high platform, all the elders and protectors were shocked. The battle between the two of them had caused such a huge commotion. Swoosh swoosh, The sound of wind breaking could be heard. Hu Songquan and Hao Zhongwei landed on the square. They changed their hand seals and a huge light screen covered the square. It blocked the pressure from Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. Only then did the disciples who were not strong martial veins. They felt better. Walala, in the sky, the two figures were in a stalemate. Sima Muhan was gradually covered by the green light like a bright moon. Du Xiaofu was shrouded in lightning. He was like a thunderball in the sky. The sea of lightning flashed around him. It was so dazzling that it made people tremble with fear. This was no longer a battle of physical strength. It was a battle of two martial veins. It made the space in the sky change. Heaven and earth were about to collapse. The mist spread and ripples spread in all directions. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The two of them were in a stalemate. Time passed slowly. The whole square was silent. Countless eyes were fixed on them and no one dared to blink. At this moment, even the elders on the high platform were not sure who would win in the end. Although Sima Muhan's cultivation was higher, Du Xiaofu's terrifying lightning aura and martial vein spiritual seal could even suppress Sima Muhan's greenwood martial vein. Qi La, after a full 15 minutes, the dazzling green light of vitality and the overbearing destructive electric light spread out. The bright moon-like green light gradually dissipated and cracked. Waves of terrifying electric light shuttled through space and poured into the green light, destroying the vitality. Puchi, Sima Muhan's delicate body fell to the ground. A mouthful of blood was spat out from her mouth. Her eyes that were covered by the green light gradually turned back to light purple. Her face was as pale as ash. Sima Muhan looked at the terrifying thunderball in the sky. Her delicate body trembled. Her eyes closed slightly and she fainted on the ground. Lost, senior sister Muhan lost. The surrounding square was stunned. Sima Muhan, who seemed to be winning, was defeated by Du Xiaofu in the end. In the air, the terrifying thunder ball gradually faded. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the square. The strange and mysterious light net on his body was also gradually converging. After Du Xiaofu's body landed on the ground, the lightning in his eyes slowly disappeared. His face was also as pale as ash and his eyes were faintly golden. Puchi, wisps of pale golden blood overflowed from Du Xiaofu's mouth. Then his body collapsed on the ground and fainted. His body was still faintly flickering with lightning. On the high platform, all the elders looked at each other. This result seemed to be beyond everyone's expectations. Whoosh whoosh, Elder Hu Songquan and Elder Hao Zhongwei, who were already present, immediately came to Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan's side. The two elders looked dignified. After checking the aura of the two people, their dignified faces relaxed. They nodded slightly to Sima Ta Xing and the others on the high platform, indicating that the two people were fine. Sect Master, these two people have fainted. Who won and who lost? Elder Kong Zhonglei came back to his senses and asked Sima Ta Xing beside him. Do you still need to ask? Little girl Muhan fainted first. Naturally, she lost first. Elder Gu Qingyang recovered from his shock. Seeing that his precious disciple had fainted, he immediately rushed down the stage. Muhan fainted first. Counting it, Du Xiaofu is the winner. Sima Ta Xing nodded and said to Elder Kong, Du Xiaofu wins and becomes the #1 inner sect disciple. As Sima Ta Xing's voice fell, Elder Kong's voice, which contained profound energy, resounded throughout the square. Boom! As Elder Kong's voice fell, the surrounding square suddenly trembled. Boiling sounds gathered and resounded throughout the square. Strong, too strong. If we really fight in the giant rock space, I'm afraid that the one who loses in the end will be me. In the crowd, Inamo Chin sighed and shook his head. A wry smile appeared on his handsome and elegant face. If junior sister Mu-Ha had used her full strength that day, I would have been in a miserable state. Ji O-ming also smiled bitterly and sighed. With the strength of the two of them, no one on the bronze board can contend against them. Although it's a bit shameful, it's the truth. Si Ruofeng also said self-deprecatingly, Good job, Martial Uncle Du. We will always support Martial Uncle Du. The surrounding square was filled with waves of sound. The shouts were endless, and the deafening roars of excitement were endless. Especially those disciples of the ancient sky sect who had long supported Du Xiaofu. They were all so excited that their faces flushed red. For a time, the entire Sky Marshal Square was filled with noise and excitement. In this battle, Du Xiaofu had created his own miracles time and time again, contending against Sima Muhan. The process of the duel was full of ups and downs, making it impossible for people to guess and tremble in fear. And this battle had also won the hearts of many disciples of the ancient sky sect for Du Xiaofu. Originally, many disciples thought that Du Xiaofu was only relying on the name of Elder Gu Qingyang, but now, they had all become Du Xiaofu's staunchest supporters. Perhaps this was how people were. When a person surpassed a group of people, most of them would be jealous and suspicious. But if a person surpassed a group of people by a large margin, then that person would become a god in the hearts of this group of people. What a Du Xiaofu! He really surprises me time and time again. On the high platform, Sima Taxing looked around as he listened to the boiling shouts around him. Finally, he looked at Du Xiaofu, who was being examined by Elder Gu Qingyang. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile as he said, "In less than 20 years, I'm afraid that brat will be able to surpass me." On the high platform, many elders were stunned when they heard Sima Taxing's sudden words. The head of the ancient sky sect, Sima Taxing, was an expert whose name shook the entire central province. To the entire central province, he was a person who stood at the peak. In the hearts of all cultivators, the head of the ancient sky sect, Sima Taxing, was a mountain that could not be climbed. And at that moment, Sima Taxing actually had such an evaluation of Du Xiaofu. If that were to spread out, it would likely shock the entire central province. After the duel ended, the unconscious Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan were taken away from the Heaven Marshal Plaza by the elders of the Manchu. Only then did the spectators on the Heaven Marshal Plaza slowly disperse. In the next few days, the entire ancient sky sect was talking about the spectacular duel between Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan. There was reverence in their tones. The brilliance of the process was incomparable. It exceeded everyone's expectations several times. No one would have thought that when facing Sima Muhan's earth-vein spirit and mortal emperor heavenly talent, Du Xiaofu would appear out of nowhere and turn the tables. And at that moment, Du Xiaofu's name began to quietly spread. During the several days that Du Xiaofu was still unconscious, he probably didn't know that his name had already spread throughout the many empires within the ancient sky sect. It even began to spread to the entire central province. Chapter 667. The World Society of the Ancient Heaven Sect was filled with people who wanted to join. Let's not talk about the endless stream of outer sect disciples joining the World Guild. Even the number of inner sect disciples joining the guild was numerous. Without a doubt, the World Society that was established in a short period of time had become the most popular faction in the Ancient Heaven Sect. Everyone knew that it was because of Du Xiaofu that the World Society was able to develop in such a manner. Everyone who joined the World Society came for Du Xiaofu. I knew that Big Brother would win. In a side hall, Judge Hao was very happy. With Du Xiaofu's victory, he also made a huge profit. His value increased by several times. I wonder how the president is doing. There has been no news for 5 days. Mu Jiejia was very worried. With the strong cultivators of the Manchu taking care of him, he will be fine. Qiao Yingmeng wasn't too worried. However, she was worried about the World Society. There have been too many people joining the World Society recently. We have developed too quickly and our foundation isn't stable. I'm afraid that we won't be able to compete with the factions in the Manchu. Hearing this, Emowen, who rarely spoke, frowned and said, "The people who joined the World Society all joined because of the president. If anything happens in the World Society will be on the verge of collapse. These problems can't be solved in a short period of time. When the time comes, let's wait for the president's opinion. I believe he will have a solution," Qiao Yingmeng said. She couldn't think of a good solution for now. In the ancient heaven sect, the night was as silent as water. The earth was in a deep sleep. An ancient aura spread out and the world seemed to be silent. In a courtyard on a tall mountain peak, Yuanli and Elder Gu Qingyang were quietly standing in a room. Master, how is little junior brother? Looking at Du Xiaofu, who was still sleeping on the bed, Yuanli's eyes were filled with worry. He asked Elder Gu Qingyang, "It's already the 7th day. Little junior brother won't have any problems, right? Your martial uncles and martial uncles have already come to examine him. Your junior brother is fine, he's just exhausted. However, there are many secrets in his body that might affect your junior brother. Your martial uncles and martial uncles don't dare to examine him too deeply. However, I believe there won't be any problems." Elder Gu Qingyang said to Wanli. "That's good. Yuanli editor, Cloud." Then he looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and Cloud. "Gu Qingyang, Elder Gu Qingyang, Elder Gu Qingyang. Your junior brother's talent is monstrous. I really want him to stay in the sect, but..." Elder Gu Qingyang softly sighed. A moment later, he softly said, "Perhaps they are right. If it is truly for the sake of your little junior brother and the entire Ancient Heaven sect, I'm afraid that I will have no choice but to give up this treasure." Time slowly passed, and the Ancient Heaven sect was as usual. The Manchu disciples continued to cultivate in seclusion, and the disciples continued to comprehend in various places. Every month, the new and old disciples would have deacons and elders who would regularly explain cultivation and dispel the various obstacles in cultivation. For all the disciples, this was a great benefit. 10 days had passed. During these 10 days, some things had happened. Following the conclusion of the battle between the new inner sect disciples, the new disciples began to enter the bronze ranking. As for the bronze ranking that Yin Machin and the others occupied, it rose to the silver ranking. The disciples who were originally on the silver roll also entered the gold roll. It was said that Yin Machin and the other rankers on the silver roll also had to undergo a rather cruel training session with the original rankers on the silver roll. It would only end after 7 days. As for the process and results of the training, very few of the new inner sect disciples knew about it. As for the first rankers on the gold roll, they could be considered to have achieved some success. It was said that some stayed in the Manchu, while others were arranged by the Manchu to various empires within the Ancient Heaven sect. There were also those who stayed in the Manchu to become deacons, while others chose to continue cultivating in seclusion. Of course, at least half of them left the Ancient Heaven sect. Some needed to return to their families or factions to serve, while others went outside the Ancient Heaven sect to temper themselves. Although it was said that the 9 great factions controlled the entire central province, in reality, there were still many barren lands, vast mountains, and ancient forests, as well as all kinds of dangerous places. Those places were all heavens for cultivators to temper themselves, and there were many legendary places of fortune. Those places were prosperous and chaotic, and even the 9 great factions felt that there were few places where they could interfere. The new inner sect disciples were qualified to enter the ancient bronze space, but they needed the ancient bronze talisman. It was said that there were many places of enlightenment in the ancient bronze space, and it was one of the core areas of the Ancient Heaven sect. Only the inner sect disciples of the Ancient Heaven sect could set foot in there. The rankings on the bronze roll had already been announced in the Manchu. The top 16 were all ranked according to the results of the competition on the Tianwu Square 10 days ago. Du Xiaofu was first on the bronze roll, and Sima Muhan was second. As for the rankings after the 16th place, all the disciples had to go to the Tianwu Square to compete for the rest of their lives. In a few days, a new bronze roll had also appeared in the Ancient Heaven sect. Master, third senior brother. On the evening of the 10th day, Du Xiaofu woke up and opened his eyes. He immediately saw his master, Elder Gu Qingyang, and his third senior brother, Yuanli, in front of him. Seeing the worry in the eyes of her master and third senior brother, she couldn't help but feel a wave of warmth in her heart. "Kid, you're finally awake." Seeing that Du Xiaofu had woken up, Elder Gu Qingyang finally let go of his worries. "Little junior brother, if you didn't wake up, we would have been worried." Yuanli immediately supported Du Xiaofu, who was lying on the bed, with a faint smile on his face. Disciple is at fault for making master and third senior brother worry. With Yuanli's help, Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged on the bed. Feeling that the purple gold heavenly tower was still on his back, he secretly let out a sigh of relief. Don't be so courteous. Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu, the experts of the Manchu have already examined you. They said that you should be fine. You've only used too much energy, but it's not a big problem. Du Xiaofu smiled and looked at the room. At this time, he was in his own courtyard. His master and third senior brother should have escorted him back. Then, he felt that there was nothing wrong with his body other than his injuries. Since you're awake, you should be fine. Take your time to recover. The sect master should be looking for you. After Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu, he left a lot of elixirs and left with Yuan Li, leaving Du Xiaofu alone to recover. Du Xiaofu formed a seal and carefully felt the situation in his body. He walked out of the room and activated the talisman array that he had arranged earlier. Then, he returned to his room and called out the ancient desolate space. In the misty ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu really needed to recover. After stuffing a lot of elixirs into his mouth, he began to form hand seals to regulate his breathing. Walala, after a while, Du Xiaofu's body was shrouded in a layer of faint golden light. 2 days in the outside world were 20 days in the ancient desolate space. In the misty ancient desolate space, a dazzling golden light shone. A figure was sitting cross-legged. His face was rosy and his breathing was even. Under the golden light, his aura was domineering. With 10 times the time, it was enough for Du Xiaofu's injuries to recover. Du Xiaofu cultivated the cultivation method of the golden-winged great rock. In addition to the strength of his body, Du Xiaofu had spent 20 days in the desolate ancient space and used many medicinal pills to heal himself. Not only had his injuries healed completely, but even his aura had become much stronger than before. As Du Xiaofu withdrew his hand seal, the golden halo surrounding him began to gradually shrink. In the end, it was like a sliver of golden spirit snake energy that mysteriously drilled into his body. His tightly shut eyes also suddenly opened. Chi-chi, 2 rays of light shot out from his pale golden eyes. An ancient and domineering aura swept out from his body, causing the misty space to tremble. He spat out a mouthful of turbid air. On his resolute and determined face, the golden light in his eyes retracted. Then they became clear and deep. I've finally recovered. Feeling everything in his body, Du Xiaofu smiled and stretched lazily. All the bones in his body started to crackle. Inside the divine watchtower, the profound energy was full and dense, and an indescribable sense of comfort crawled all over his body. Your injuries this time were not light. Was the opponent very strong? At this moment, Zhen Qingchuan's voice sounded. Not far from the space, a small bronze pagoda was suffused with flowing light. A smoke-like fluctuation spread out from the small pagoda. Finally, it condensed into Zhen Qingchuan's figure. As his voice fell, Zhen Qingchuan's wretched figure appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. His cheeks were fat, his eyebrows were inverted, and his eyes were triangular. However, after Du Xiaofu got used to it, he felt a warm and intimate feeling. That girl is too terrifying. Her meridian spirit is a stalk of grass. Her martial vein is also different. It's full of vitality and terrifying power. Du Xiaofu immediately told Jin Qingchun about Sima Muhan's situation. Chapter 668. If I'm not wrong, it should be the grass of immortality and the greenwood vein spirit. I didn't expect that girl to be so talented. After hearing Du Xiaofu's words, Zhen Qingchun was also shocked. He said, the grass of immortality belongs to the earth vein spirit. It's much stronger than the beast vein spirit. Even the top beasts on the heavenly beast ranking can't compare to the earth vein spirit, unless it's an immemorial beast descendant. As for the greenwood vein, according to what you said, the girl should have merged with the greenwood vein. She has the human emperor natural disposition. That girl is indeed very strong. What is the earth vein spirit and the human emperor natural disposition? Du Xiaofu asked. This was the first time he heard about the earth vein spirit and the human emperor natural disposition. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and asked, do you know about the monster race? I know a little, but not much. Du Xiaofu shook his head at Zhen Qingchun. He didn't know much about the monster race. Zhen Qingchun smiled and said to Du Xiaofu, Everything in the world has a spirit. Mountains, rivers, peaks, every blade of grass, every tree, every flower, and every fruit can become a spirit. Over countless years, there have been many spiritual mountains, rivers, and peaks in this world. Flowers, trees, plants, and fruits have all turned into demon spirits. Each and every one of them is incomparably powerful, hiding among the masses. Any one of them has terrifying strength. For example, little demon Du is a member of the demon race, and also a demon spirit. Zhen Qingchun paused for a while and continued to say to Du Xiaofu, who was stunned, "For cultivators, some people use the monster race as their vain spirit. This vain spirit is called the beast vain spirit. However, there are also extremely strong people who use the monster race as their vain spirit and become the earth vain spirit. The level of the earth vain spirit is much higher than the beast vain spirit. So this is the earth vain soul." Du Xiaofu finally understood, and it was not hard to understand. For example, his vain spirit was Du Xiaoyao's original body. It was also by chance that his vain spirit had taken on the appearance of Du Xiaoyao's original body, which was far superior to ordinary beast vain spirits. Of course, it doesn't mean that all beast vain souls are incomparable to earth vain souls. Those who possess earth vain souls that possess archaic remains and ancient demonic beasts are all extremely terrifying. Zhen Qingchun continued to say to Du Xiaofu, "The golden-winged great pringbird that is related to you is not an ordinary demonic beast. If someone can obtain the golden-winged great pringbird and turn it into a vain spirit, they will not be inferior to an earth vain spirit." Du Xiaofu lightly smiled, then asked, "I feel that the grass of immortality is very powerful. Among the demon spirits, is it an extremely powerful existence?" "Of course. The grass of immortality is the king of the demon spirits. It is said that it has the means to bring people back from the dead." Zhen Qingchun nodded and said, "But I feel that Du Xiaoyao's original body is even stronger than the grass of immortality." Du Xiaoyao's original body is even stronger. That's true. Du Xiaofu nodded. He could also feel that Du Xiaoyao's original body was definitely stronger than the grass of immortality. He said to Zhen Qingchun, "What is the greenwood martial vein? How many martial veins are there in this world? How many Renhuang talents are there?" Zhen Qingchun's expression became slightly more serious. Looking at Du Xiaofu, he said, "There are so many martial veins in this world. Those whose martial veins exceed the 9th level will become the most outstanding person among people. They will be regarded as outstanding talents, and their future will be limitless. There are also some people who are born with a special kind of martial vein. With this special martial vein, their body will also obtain a special kind of power. This kind of special power may come from the heaven and earth, or from the bloodline, and will be very close to them. Relying on this special power brought by the special martial vein, their cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds, and their future will be limitless. This is called King's martial vein. These people are also called the King of Men, the King of Men, the heavenly talent of men." Zhen Qingchun pursed his lips and continued, "I've already mentioned the outstanding talents and the human king talents to you before. However, there is another type of person in this world. They are born with king martial veins connected to their bloodline and their mind and soul. They can easily communicate with the special energy of heaven and earth and become the favored child of that special energy of heaven and earth. They can control mountains and lakes, move mountains and seas, or mobilize wind, fire, thunder and lightning. They are born with the king martial vein. They are called Renhuang, the Emperor of Kings, and have the King of Men. In this world, any person with the King of Men can become an absolute top cultivator in the future and be proud of everything." After Zhen Qingchun finished speaking, his eyes were also full of shock. How many people with the King of Men could there be in this world? The martial vein and the blood vein are connected and become the favorite of a special energy of heaven and earth. Du Xiaofu murmured softly. Thinking back carefully, Sima Muhan activated the greenwood martial vein and controlled the vigorous energy. It was indeed different from the king martial vein activated by Si Ruofeng, Lu Kuan, Feng Xiangyu, and the others. That kind of power was more powerful and truly integrated with heaven and earth. You don't have to be too surprised. You have the martial vein spiritual mark in your body, which proves that your original martial vein is definitely not inferior to the King of Men. At least, only those with the King of Men can condense the martial vein spiritual mark in their body, Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. King of Men, Du Xiaofu's eyes flashed with a faint light. After a while, he asked Zhen Qingchun, Brother Qingchun, how long will it take for you to fully recover? I've already recovered a lot. It's just that because of my original cultivation method and some unforeseen events, although there are no major problems now and a complete recovery is just around the corner, it won't take long for me to fully recover. But in terms of time, I'm afraid it's not something that can be done in a short period of time. If I want to completely recover, I'll need another treasure. If I'm at my peak, I should be able to get it with some effort. But in the current situation, I'm afraid it's just a pipe dream. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and said, but the current situation is much better. When you become a real expert in the future, if you have the opportunity to help me find that treasure, it won't be difficult for me to fully recover. What kind of treasure is it? I think maybe the Ancient Heaven sect should have it. Du Xiaofu asked Zhen Qingchun. With the Ancient Heaven sect's power and heritage, there should be countless treasures. Although the Ancient Heaven sect is powerful, I'm afraid it's difficult for them to possess such a treasure. Treasures like that can only be found by chance. It's not something you can obtain just because you're powerful. Zhen Qingchun smiled and said, what I need is a piece of bark from the boundless tree. If I can obtain a piece of bark from the boundless tree, not only will I be able to fully recover my cultivation from when I was at my peak, but I might even be able to take the opportunity to break through. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhen Qingchun's eyes were filled with anticipation and yearning. Boundless tree, Du Xiaofu muttered softly, keeping the boundless tree in his heart. After chatting with Zhen Qingchun for a while, Du Xiaofu left the desolate ancient space and went to the main peak of Tianmu Peak to see his master. Junior brother really is a monster. He actually recovered so quickly. Seeing Du Xiaofu's rosy complexion and sensing that Du Xiaofu had already recovered to such a state, Yuanli could not help but be shocked. He stared at Du Xiaofu in disbelief and carefully studied him for a long time. You've come at the right time. Come with me to see the sect master. Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu. For some unknown reason, on his rosy face, his clear eyes were suffused with some helplessness and reluctance. After a while, Du Xiaofu and Elder Gu Qingyang slowly descended from the sky on a huge mountain surrounded by many other mountains. The mountain was surrounded by clouds and mist. It was verdant and lush, and streams gurgled. It was full of vitality. In the distance, the mountains rose and fell, creating a magnificent scene. What a special place! There was a precipitous cliff on the mountain peak. Looking down, it seemed to be a bottomless abyss. It was so dark that nothing could be seen. Only mist like water flowed within, causing Du Xiaofu to be shocked. Faintly, there seemed to be some kind of terrifying, ferocious beast hibernating within the dusky bottomless abyss. Xiaofu, let's go in. The sect master should be waiting for us. Elder Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu as he gazed at the grand hall on the mountain peak. Du Xiaofu followed Elder Gu Qingyang into the hall. Sect Master Sima Ta Xing was seated at the head of the hall. His aura was mighty without being angry. On his handsome face, a brilliance flickered in his glass-like eyes. At this moment, there were no less than a dozen elders seated on both sides of the hall. Hu Songquan, Hao Zhongwei, Yan Mingze, Kong Zhonglei and other elders were present. Greetings to Senior Brothers Sect Master and Elders. Du Xiaofu bowed. This was not the first time that he had intentionally or unintentionally tried to pry into the sect master's cultivation level. However, he had been unable to do so. You've recovered really quickly. Sensing Du Xiaofu's aura, Sima Ta Xing's eyes were filled with surprise. It was absolutely inconceivable that Du Xiaofu had not recovered to such an extent in just 2 days. This kid has recovered too quickly. He's really abnormal. The gazes of the numerous elders had already landed on Du Xiaofu's body in shock. The battle at the Tianwu Square back then had left all the elders in awe of Du Xiaofu. Chapter 669. The gazes of many elders had already landed on Du Xiaofu in shock. The battle at the Tianwu Square had left all the elders in awe of Du Xiaofu. Xiaofu, there are no outsiders today. Sit down, Sima Xingtai said to Su Mo. Sima Taxing said to Du Xiaofu. It seemed that he was used to Du Xiaofu's abnormal behavior. A guy who relied on the cultivation of the complete martial lord realm had actually defeated a Renhuang genius of the martial king realm at the Nirvana realm. What could be more abnormal than this? Xiaofu, sit down. Elder Gu Qingyang sat beside Sima Xingtai and then said to Du Xiaofu. However, his expression was somewhat abnormal today, with a hint of gloominess and helplessness. Yes. After Du Xiaofu nodded, he sat on the chair behind 2 rows of elders. He felt that his master, Elder Gu Qingyang's, expression was somewhat abnormal today. Du Xiaofu sat below. None of the elders had any objections. Many elders even nodded slightly to Du Xiaofu. As Du Xiaofu sat down, Sima Xingtai looked at Elder Gu Qingyang and said, "Martial uncle, you should speak." Elder Gu Qingyang nodded slightly. Then, his gaze landed on Du Xiaofu and said, "Xiaofu, I have something to discuss with you today. One of your martial uncles has stopped accepting disciples a long time ago, but he intends to take you in as his last disciple. You can leave my sect and enter your martial uncle's sect to cultivate. What do you think?" Hearing this, Du Xiaofu immediately stood up. His clear eyes looked at Elder Gu Qingyang. His gaze was filled with doubt as he said, "Master, are you going to expel me from your sect?" "Of course not." Elder Gu Qingyang shook his head. He forced out a bitter smile and said, "I might not have told you clearly, but that uncle master of yours is one of the peak experts of my ancient heaven sect. His cultivation is even above mine. To tell you the truth, I haven't taken in many disciples in my life. Including you, there are only 6 of them. Your first 5 senior brothers and sisters are all extraordinary. But under my tutelage, none of them achieved anything. Facts have proven that it is indeed not suitable for me to accept any more disciples, lest I lead them astray and ruin their future. Your natural talent is extremely high. If you continue to stay under my wing, I'm afraid you'll follow in the footsteps of your 5 senior brothers and senior sisters one day. So, if you join your martial uncle's wing, you'll naturally be able to benefit greatly in the future. Not long after, you'll definitely be able to become an expert." As Elder Gu Qingyang's words fell, many of the other elders' faces were filled with emotions. Because of the competition between the disciples, many of the elders had teased Elder Gu Qingyang many times over the years. However, when they heard Elder Gu Qingyang's words, they could not help but feel emotional. For the sake of the entire ancient heaven sect, Elder Gu Qingyang was willing to give up such a talented disciple. This kind of noble character and unquestionable integrity was not something an ordinary person could do. Afterwards, all the elders looked at Du Xiaofu. That expert in the Manchu had spoken, intending to take Du Xiaofu in as a disciple. This was a rare opportunity. Countless people in the ancient heaven sect wanted to become a disciple of that expert, but they could not get what they wanted. Becoming a disciple of that expert was equivalent to becoming an expert whose name would shake the Central Plains in the future. A master for a day is a master for life. As the saying goes, the master leads the way and the cultivation is up to the individual. How can I change my master's wing? Du Xiaofu looked at Elder Gu Qingyang with gratitude in his clear eyes. He said, "Disciple knows that this is master's goodwill, but disciple has already made up his mind. I will not change my master's wing." There were ripples in Elder Gu Qingyang's eyes. He looked at Du Xiaofu and scolded, "You little brat, if you become a disciple of your uncle master, you will definitely benefit greatly in the future. If you continue to stay under my tutelage, you will only bury your talent. I know that I don't know how to teach you on the road of cultivation. If you still have me as your master in your heart when you become a top cultivator in the future, I will be satisfied." Disciple has already made up his mind. A master for a day is a master for life. Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang, how could Du Xiaofu not know that although Elder Gu Qingyang was unable to guide him too much on the path of cultivation, Elder Gu Qingyang's love and care for him came from the bottom of his heart. His path of cultivation was different from others, And he also had the guidance of this big brother Jin Qingchun. This kind of care was something that he would never forget. Du Xiaofu knelt on the ground and raised his head to look at Elder Gu Qingyang. He said, "Disciple does not kneel to the heavens, nor the earth, nor the emperor. I only kneel to my parents and master. Today, unless master expels me from the sect, disciple will not change his master's wing." This kid, should I call him stupid or something? If only I had a disciple like him. Looking at Du Xiaofu, some of the elders sighed in admiration, while others were envious. "Elder Qingyang, you've really accepted a good disciple this time." Some elders sighed. When accepting a disciple, one must have outstanding talent and intelligence, but in comparison, one's character was more important. Du Xiaofu's character caused all the elders to be moved. Her talent was outstanding, and her nature was firm and resolute. Such a disciple was actually accepted by Elder Gu Qingyang as his disciple. If I had known, I would have chased after him no matter what." Hu Songquan and Elder Chang Mingze exchanged glances, their hearts aching. If they had known that Du Xiaofu had such talent and character, how could they not have chased after him? It was precisely because Elder Gu Qingyang had chased after him that he was able to accept such a disciple as his disciple. "Xiaofu, quickly get up. A man has gold under his knees, how can he kneel so casually? Get up." Elder Gu Qingyang's figure flashed like lightning, appearing in front of Du Xiaofu in a flash. He pulled Du Xiaofu up with both hands, his clear eyes rippling with tears. "Master, are you not going to expel me from the sect?" Du Xiaofu stood up, looking at the old man in front of him. "Ha!" Elder Gu Qingyang laughed, patting Du Xiaofu's shoulder, saying, "I, Gu Qingyang, am satisfied to be able to accept you as my disciple in this lifetime. In the future, not to mention your martial uncle, even if your grandmaster wants you, I will not agree." As his words fell, Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu, his clear eyes turning as he said, "However, you must remember to seek guidance from your martial uncle in the future. Do not delay on your cultivation path. This disciple understands." Du Xiaofu nodded, a slight smile appearing on his face. Fine." Sima Taxing could only helplessly look at the situation, but his glassy eyes secretly flashed with admiration. He then said to the many elders in the hall, "Just now, Du Xiaofu has formally become a disciple of martial uncle Gu Qingyang in the Manchu. From now on, Du Xiaofu is the disciple of martial uncle Gu Qingyang. Congratulations, Elder Qingyang. Congratulations, Elder Qingyang." Hearing this, all the elders present immediately congratulated Elder Gu Qingyang. Having accepted such a disciple, Gu Qingyang was much stronger than all of their disciples. They were all very envious. "Congratulations, congratulations as well." Elder Gu Qingyang beamed with joy, sweeping away the previous haze and becoming full of smiles. After a while, only Sima Taxing, Du Xiaofu, and Gu Qingyang were in the side hall behind the main hall. "Du Xiaofu, I called you here alone because there is one more thing I want to discuss with you." In the side hall, Sima Taxing said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu nodded and said to Sima Taxing, "Please go ahead, senior brother. Sit down first. There are no outsiders here. You are now my junior brother. You don't need to be too polite." Sima Taxing motioned Du Xiaofu to sit down, and then said to Du Xiaofu seriously, "Before that, I have to ask you something first. You have to tell me the truth." "Please ask, senior brother." Du Xiaofu nodded after sitting down, and there was no trace of fluctuation in his eyes. If he could tell the truth, he would naturally not hide it. After all, he was also a member of the ancient sky sect. "You have used the beast energy of the golden winged rock, and it seems to be extraordinary. Is it related to the golden winged rock?" Sima Taxing asked. "Yes." Du Xiaofu nodded. There was nothing to hide. He said to Sima Taxing, "By chance, I obtained some things related to the golden winged rock. I comprehended a lot of the golden winged rock's beast energy and secret techniques. It can be considered to be somewhat successful." Sure enough. Hearing this, Sima Taxing's serious face revealed a slight smile, and then he continued to say to Du Xiaofu, "It seems that this time, you can't enter the secret area of the Manchu with Mu Ha, Feng Xiangyu, Shu Yang, and the others to cultivates. Why is that? Hearing this, Du Xiaofu was stunned. Back then, they had agreed that if they could win, the 16 of them would be able to enter a secret area of the ancient sky sect to cultivate. Don't be too nervous. You can't enter that secret area to cultivate, but you can enter a sealed area of our ancient sky sect. That sealed area might be of great help to you in comprehending the beast energy and secret techniques of the golden winged rock. Sima Taxing looked at Du Xiaofu and said, "Our ancient sky sect has always sealed off the news of that sealed area. Other than a very small number of people, no one else knows about it because that sealed area is related to the golden winged rock." Chapter 670. Is it related to the golden winged rock? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. If the sealed land was related to the golden winged rock, then it was a suitable place for him to go. He might really be able to gain something from it. Elder Gu Qingyang continued. He looked at Du Xiaofu with his clear eyes and said, "That is a secret place in the ancient sky sect. It has existed for many years. It is said that it is related to the founding ancestor of the ancient sky sect. Only those who have comprehended the golden winged rock's beast energy can enter that sealed land. Others cannot enter at all." Pursing his lips, Elder Gu Qingyang looked at Du Xiaofu seriously and continued, "In the past countless years, many Manchu people who were lucky enough to comprehend the golden winged rock's beast energy have entered that sealed land. However, in the end, no one has been able to come out except for an elder from the ancient sky sect 500 years ago. That sealed land is a place of great danger?" Du Xiaofu's eyes trembled. Out of all the people from the ancient sky sect who went in, only one person was able to come out. It could be seen that the sealed land was definitely a place of great danger. Elder Gu Qingyang continued to speak to Du Xiaofu. "No one knows what is inside and what is inside. However, according to the elder who was lucky enough to come out of the sealed land is related to the golden winged rock race. In that sealed land, the elder from the Manchu comprehended the golden winged rock's beast energy. With the golden winged rock's beast energy, it was rare for him to meet a worthy opponent. He was able to defeat his peers and become famous in the central province." Du Xiaofu nodded. The golden winged rock's beast energy was extraordinary. To be able to comprehend the golden winged rock's beast energy, he was naturally not an ordinary person. Unfortunately, 80 years ago, that elder secretly entered the sealed land again to seek a breakthrough. However, he never came out again. Sima Taxing looked at Du Xiaofu and said, his eyes were filled with emotions. That elder was extremely powerful. If they lost him, it would undoubtedly be a great blow to the entire ancient sky sect. Did that Manchu elder also encounter trouble in the sealed land? Du Xiaofu frowned. If that was the case, then the sealed land was definitely a place of no return. Sima Taxing shook his head. He left a seal in the Manchu. That elder left a seal in the Manchu is still in the sealed land. If he is in the Manchu, then the seal. The Manchus is the Manchu elders. The Manchu. Gu Qingyang said to Du Xiaofu, according to the sect's guess, that elder should have been trapped in the sealed land or fallen into some kind of predicament, so he hasn't come out in the past 80 years. Has anyone from the Manchu gone in to search? Du Xiaofu asked. To be able to stay in the sealed land for 80 years, the probability of him being in seclusion all the time was not too high. It was most likely that he had encountered some unforeseen circumstances inside. Sima Taxing's star smiled bitterly and said to Du Xiaofu, like I said before, only those who have comprehended the abilities of the golden winged rock can enter the sealed place. There are very few people who can comprehend the abilities of the golden winged rock, and those who don't comprehend enough cannot enter. So in the past 30 years, only 2 people have entered the sealed land, but they have never come out. The seals they left behind have dissipated. They must have suffered a great calamity in the sealed land. This seems to be very troublesome. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. Experts were unable to enter, and even if a disciple who had comprehended the golden winged rock beast ability entered, he would not be able to return. No one knew what was going on inside the seal grounds, and this matter was very troublesome. I can sense that the power of the golden winged rock you've comprehended is extraordinary. Over the years, I've seen a few people who have comprehended the power of the golden-winged rock, but none of them can compare to you. Sima Taxing looked at Du Xiaofu. His glassy eyes glowed as he frowned slightly. He said to Du Xiaofu sternly, "The Manchu experts have discussed and decided to let you enter the sealed land to take a look. Firstly, it's to see the situation of that senior. Hopefully, that senior of the Manchu will be able to escape from danger. In addition, I hope that it will be of some help to you in comprehending the golden-winged rock, but we can't make a decision on this matter. It's too dangerous inside, and the experts of the Manchu can't enter. If you suffer any mishaps inside, this is something that the Manchu definitely doesn't want to see. But right now, you are the only person who can enter the sealed land." His voice paused for a moment. Sima Taxing's gaze was complicated, and he found it difficult to make a decision. Then he continued to speak to Du Xiaofu. "So, this matter must be decided by you. If you don't want to enter the sealed land to try, then tomorrow morning, you can enter the secret plane with Muha and the others to comprehend for half a year." When Du Xiaofu heard this, he was also at a loss. The sealed land was a place of no return, but it was related to the golden-winged rock clan. If he went in, he might be able to obtain some benefits, but if he went in, he might not be able to return. "Xiaofu, you have to think carefully. The sealed land is very dangerous, and you might not be able to return. If you don't want to go in, the Manchu won't make things difficult for you." Elder Gu Qingyang reminded Du Xiaofu. Although he hoped that the elder of the Manchu would be able to escape, he still hoped that his disciple would be safe. "If you don't enter the tiger's den, you won't get the tiger cub. Only with great danger will there be great opportunities." Du Xiaofu's eyes moved as he thought to himself. He was also very conflicted in his heart. After a long while, he gritted his teeth and raised his head to look at his master, Elder Gu Qingyang, and Sima Taxing. "Master, senior brother sect master, I am willing to enter the sealed land and give it a try. You want to go in?" When Sima Taxing heard this, he suddenly became more worried. He said, "You have to think carefully. The sealed land may really be a place of no return. Didn't the elder of the Manchu come out before? I've decided to go in and give it a try." The elder of the Manchu had also come out before. This made Du Xiaofu decide that he was willing to give it a try. Riches and honor were found in danger. The sealed land was related to the golden-winged rock clan. Naturally, he had to explore it. If he didn't go, it would not be Du Xiaofu's style. Seeing that Du Xiaofu had made a decision, Sima Taxing and Elder Gu Qingyang lowered their heads and looked at each other. Finally, they nodded with a complicated expression and said nothing more. "According to the rules of your previous victory, you can get a high-grade Dao tool from the Manchu as a reward. Take this. It is a treasure passed down from the Manchu. It is already at the top of the high-grade Dao tools. It is said that in terms of defense, it can be called a peak high-grade Dao tool." Sima Taxing handed a Qiankuan bag to Du Xiaofu and said, "This treasure is also related to the golden-winged rock. I hope it can be of help to you in the sealed land. You should recognize and refine it as your master as soon as possible. 5 days later, you can enter the sealed land." Du Xiaofu nodded after receiving the Qiankuan bag. He was full of expectations for treasures related to the golden-winged rock. After leaving the main hall, Du Xiaofu did not go back to his place of residence. Instead, he went directly to the outer sect. Compared to the inner sect, the outer sect of the Ancient Heaven sect was undoubtedly more prosperous and lively. In the Ancient Heaven sect, the total number of inner sect disciples did not exceed 3,000 people, including many protectors and elders. In the outer sect, there were hundreds of thousands of disciples. It could be said to be a small city. It was impossible for all the disciples to cultivate 24 hours a day. During this time, they had to change their clothes and buy cultivation resources. Female disciples could not do without rouge face powder, exquisite accessories, and so on. This made the outer sect extremely prosperous. The inner sect disciples also often went to the outer sect for a stroll. There was an area in the outer sect. There were several streets inside and outside. They were densely packed with shops and businesses. There were accessories, clothing, rouge, face powder, and so on. Among them, the most lively were the shops that bought and sold cultivation resources. These shops were no different from the businesses outside. They had martial skills, talisman arrays, elixirs, spiritual herbs, weapons, body armor, and so on. The difference was that the shops in the outer sect had some high-grade martial skills and high-grade elixirs. It was absolutely difficult for businesses in the outside world to have them. Many businesses in the outside world would come to the Ancient Heaven sect to get their goods. In the early days of the Ancient Heaven sect's sphere of influence, the Ancient Heaven sect was the leader of all the businesses in the outside world. The scale of this secret business was absolutely beyond the imagination of ordinary people. It was easy to imagine how prosperous the outer sect was. Think about it. Just the cultivation resources of hundreds of thousands of people in the Ancient Heaven sect were enormous. The World Pavilion was a shop opened by the recently popular World Club. It was located in the most prosperous area in the outer sect area. Close to it were many famous shops in the Ancient Heaven sect, big and small. Because of the World Club, the World Pavilion had been in the limelight recently. It had attracted the attention of many disciples and customers. It had successfully gained a foothold. It was said that the business of the World Pavilion recently had made many old shops envious. As dusk approached, the sun set in the west and the sunset covered the sky. Du Xiaofu's figure appeared outside the World Pavilion. As dusk approached, the streets were still bustling with people. The streets were not as noisy as the outside world, but it was still quite noisy and lively. It was like a small city in the outside world. Du Xiaofu walked into the World Pavilion. It was not small. It was about 10 feet long and several feet wide. All the counters and walls were filled with a dazzling array of elixirs, spiritual herbs, martial skills, weapons, armors, martial skills, talisman arrays, and so on. Du Xiaofu even saw that there were a lot of energy copper talismans on sale. However, the price was not low. At this moment, there were dozens of disciples in the World Pavilion with their heads lowered, choosing various cultivation resources. President, why are you here? Sorry for making everyone wait. Today's update is over. Everyone, rest early. Chapter 671. Gu Zhangyu, who was counting something at the counter, raised his head. When he saw Du Xiaofu appear in World Pavilion, he immediately rushed out. It's Martial Uncle Du, it really is Martial Uncle Du, greetings, Martial Uncle Du. Inside World Pavilion, a dozen Manchu disciples who were picking out cultivation items raised their heads. When they saw Du Xiaofu, they were all shocked. Then, they bowed respectfully. In the Ancient Heaven sect, everyone knew about Du Xiaofu's identity. As the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang, he could be considered as the sect master's junior brother. This status was enough to make all the outer sect disciples respect him. Moreover, the battle between Du Xiaofu and Sima Muhan in the Tianwu Plaza had already shocked the entire Ancient Heaven sect. To the outer sect disciples, Du Xiaofu had absolute respect for them. There's no need to be so polite. If you need anything in the future, you can come to World Pavilion to take a look. Du Xiaofu smiled. He knew that there were more than 100,000 disciples in the Ancient Heaven sect, but the forces behind them were even more powerful. The disciples who could enter the Ancient Heaven sect were definitely not ordinary disciples. Most of them had their own families and forces behind them. The 100,000 disciples in the Ancient Heaven sect had close to 100,000 families and forces behind them. With the talent of these disciples and the status of the Ancient Heaven sect's disciples, it was very likely that they would influence the families behind them. When the time came, the sales of World Pavilion would definitely be huge. Yes, we will definitely only come to World Pavilion in the future. Hearing Du Xiaofu's words, the dozen people were instantly excited. They nodded their heads and replied, President, why are you here? How are your injuries? We were all worried about you. Gu Zhangyu came to Du Xiaofu's side and immediately asked. His gaze kept on sizing up Du Xiaofu's body. Du Xiaofu smiled and said to Gu Zhangyu, I'm fine now. What about them? Gu Zhangyu knew that Du Xiaofu was asking about Hao Guan, Qiao Yingmeng, Mu Zhejia, Mo Wen, Beniyu, and the others. He replied, Senior brother Hao Guan and the others came this morning. Tomorrow, they will enter the Manchu's secret area to cultivate for half a year. Therefore, They left after giving me some instructions. Du Xiaofu nodded. Judge Hao, Xiao Yingmeng, and the others were going into seclusion for half a year, so World Pavilion could only be handed over to Gu Zhangyu. Subsequently, Du Xiaofu also found out some information about the World Society from Gu Zhangyu. The World Pavilion was opened by the World Clubhouse. Most of the cultivation items inside were consigned by the current members of the World Clubhouse. In terms of overall competitiveness, it didn't seem to be very strong. Especially as Gu Zhangyu had said, there were very few alchemy talisman masters and artifact talisman masters in the World Association, so the items that the World Pavilion could offer were not many. Once the World Society's disciples finished selling their cultivation resources, the World Pavilion might directly close down. Moreover, if the World Pavilion's cultivation resources were scarce, it would have a huge impact on the World Pavilion in the future. There were many powerful alchemy talisman masters and artifact talisman masters in the Manchu's other factions. In the World Society, although Mu Jiajia was a spirit talisman master, her main cultivation was talisman arrays and her minor was alchemy talisman master. Moreover, she would be entering the secret area to cultivate tomorrow. In addition, although the World Society had a lot of members, they weren't united. Gu Zhangyu had also mentioned this, and Xiao Yingmeng had also mentioned it. Hearing this, Du Xiaofu frowned. President, you should be entering the Manchu's secret area to cultivate tomorrow, right? I will definitely look after the World Society and World Pavilion. Gu Zhangyu patted his chest and said to Du Xiaofu, I won't be entering the Manchu's secret area tomorrow. Du Xiaofu pondered for a moment, then said to Gu Zhangyu, give me all the spiritual herbs in the World Pavilion. In a few days I'll refine some pills and bring them over. Although Gu Zhangyu felt it was strange and didn't understand, when he heard Du Xiaofu's words, he immediately put away all the spiritual herbs in the World Pavilion. There were quite a lot of them. After Du Xiaofu put away the spiritual herbs, he gave Gu Zhangyu some instructions. Only after the sun had set did he leave the World Pavilion. When he returned to his residence, it was already dusk. After setting up a seal, Du Xiaofu immediately entered the ancient desolate space. In the ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu met with his big brother, Zhen Qingchun. He told him about what Sima Taxing and his master, Gu Qingyang, had told him about the place where the golden-winged Great Peng was sealed. After learning about everything, Zhen Qingchuan's eyes flickered. After thinking for a while, he said to Du Xiaofu, from what you've said, the ancient heaven sect shouldn't harm you. There are indeed dangers and opportunities in this matter. As for the final outcome, it will depend on your own luck and fortune. However, you must be careful in there. The experts of the ancient heaven sect cannot enter the sealed area. When the time comes, bring me in and I'll help you take a look. Du Xiaofu nodded. He would enter the sealed area in 5 days. At that time, he would naturally have to be careful. If his big brother, Zhen Qingchun, was by his side, it would naturally be much safer. Then, Du Xiaofu took out the Qiankuan pouch that Sima Taxing had given him. There were no seals in the pouch. After probing it with his spiritual force, Du Xiaofu immediately summoned something. Boom! At this moment, a golden light suddenly flickered. A mighty and overbearing aura swept out, shaking the surrounding misty space violently. Golden light shot out in all directions. A terrifying aura swept out. Screech! A sharp screech resounded. Amidst the golden light, there were golden talisman runes flickering. It was as if a golden-winged Great Peng was flapping its wings. It soared into the sky with surging power. Such a domineering and terrifying power made Du Xiaofu and Zhen Qingchun, who was not far away, tremble. Amidst the golden light, a palm leaf fan-sized golden arc fan emerged. The arc was moving. There were layers of golden feathers. Its shape was fierce and domineering. It was wrapped in talisman runes, like the golden wings of a great peng. The aura that spread out from the golden palm leaf fan was even more domineering and terrifying. For Du Xiaofu, he could feel that the aura that spread out from the golden palm leaf fan was an absolutely domineering aura of the golden-winged Great Peng bird. An extraordinary high-grade Dao tool. It seems to be related to the golden-winged Great Peng bird. Zhen Qingchuan's illusory figure also stared at the golden palm leaf fan wrapped in the golden light. There were fluctuations in his eyes. He said, "If my guess is correct, this item is refined from the feathers of the golden-winged great peng bird. It has the aura of the golden-winged great peng bird. It is a rare treasure. However, only one of the feathers is from the golden-winged great peng bird. The rest should be fakes. If they were all refined from the feathers of the golden-winged great peng bird, then it would definitely be a real treasure." Du Xiaofu was quite shocked. A real peng feather from the golden-winged great peng bird could be refined into a high-grade Dao tool. How powerful was that? Master recognition, fusion. Then Du Xiaofu smiled and condensed a seal in his hand. This golden palm leaf fan was still an ownerless item. Only after enduring the fusion could it be considered his. The next morning in the ancient heaven sect, Sima Muhan, Xu Yang, Qiao Yingmeng, Hao Guan, Mo Wen, and Feng Xiangyu stood in front of a secret ground. However, Du Xiaofu was nowhere to be seen. Among the 16, one of them was Su Chuyun, who was defeated by Du Xiaofu and kicked out of the top 16. Su Chuyun's face was still extremely pale. Back then, she had been severely injured by Du Xiaofu and hadn't recovered much. Seeing that Du Xiaofu wasn't among them and couldn't enter the secret ground of the Manchu to cultivate for half a year, a sneer flashed across Su Chuyun's face. "Why isn't the president here? Strange, could it be that the president hasn't recovered yet?" Qiao Yingmeng, Hao Guan, Mo Wen, and the others were quite puzzled. They whispered among themselves, not knowing what had happened. "That guy has some matters to attend to and won't enter the secret ground with us. Don't worry too much, he should be fine now," Sima Muhan said to Qiao Yingmeng and the others. Her face was rosy and lustrous, as if she had recovered to her peak. A moment later, an elder came and opened a secret area. A surge of boundless heaven and earth energy gushed out, and the 16 of them disappeared into the secret area. As the 16 people entered seclusion, the disciples of the ancient heaven sect cultivated, comprehended, and listened to the elders' lectures. Everything went on as usual. However, Du Xiaofu didn't enter the secret ground with Sima Muhan, Qiao Yingmeng, Xu Yang, and the others. There were many versions of this in the Manchu. However, no one knew the specific reason. Inside the ancient desolate space, there was a golden light wrapped around it like a huge golden cocoon. A figure could be faintly seen sitting cross-legged there, and a strand of pressure spread out from the surroundings, and it was peerlessly domineering and fierce. Whoosh! Amidst the golden light, there seemed to be a phantom of a golden rock flapping its wings and soaring into the sky. It soared up into the sky for a moment, then flapped its wings and soared into the sky. It was as if it was alive, mysterious and powerful. This guy recognized a high-grade Dao artifact so easily. Could it be that it has something to do with the golden rock cultivation art he cultivates? Not far away, Zhen Qingchuan's eyes flickered and a look of shock appeared on his face. Chapter 672. Normally, it would not be easy for a cultivator at the peak of the martial lord realm to recognize a high-grade Dao artifact as its master. At the level of a high-grade Dao artifact, it was not easy for it to recognize someone as its master. If the person was unable to suppress the power of the Dao artifact, it would not be able to recognize someone as its master. From what Zhen Qingchuan saw, the high-grade Dao artifact easily recognized someone as its master in front of Du Xiaofu. It was as if this Dao artifact had already been refined by Du Xiaofu. Walala, within the golden light cocoon, there was a vigorous aura that was rising. The fluctuation of the aura was extremely shocking. After this continued for a few hours, the rising aura seemed to have reached its peak. There were no signs of it rising anymore. Only then did it gradually calm down. The golden light cocoon then slowly disappeared. It was as if traces of golden energy had entered Du Xiaofu's body. When the last trace of golden light around Du Xiaofu's body disappeared, he spat out a mouthful of turbid air. His tightly shut eyes opened. His gaze was deep. Tsk. The light in his eyes slowly turned clear. With a slight thought, a golden peng fan appeared in front of Du Xiaofu in his palm. The golden peng fan in front of Du Xiaofu emitted a faint golden light. It slowly rotated in front of him and emitted the sound of wind and thunder. The overbearing and swift curves on the golden peng fan were like the golden wings of a peng. It made one's heart palpitate with excitement just by looking at it. Not a bad treasure. It is not inferior to your tyrannical shadow. Looking at the golden peng fan in front of Du Xiaofu, Zhen Qingchun also praised it. This item is called the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Fan. Its defense is stronger than its attack. Du Xiaofu stretched out his hand and held the golden peng fan in front of him. From the information after it recognized him as its master, he knew that this fan was called the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Wings. Its overbearing and swift curves caused one's heart to palpitate. The aura that was faintly emitted from it was definitely not something an ordinary Dao artifact could compare to. From the information after it recognized him as its master, Du Xiaofu also knew that the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Fan was a treasure that was both offensive and defensive. In terms of defense, it was even more powerful. Many of its uses were incomparably magical. After recognizing this Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Fan, your cultivation level seems to have increased a lot. Martial Marquis Complete Peak, right? Martial Lord. Zhen Qingchun felt the aura on Du Xiaofu's body at this moment and recognized this high-grade Dao artifact as its master, allowing Du Xiaofu to obtain great benefits from it. Yes, I'm at the peak of the Martial Lord realm. After Du Xiaofu nodded his head, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. After recognizing the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Fan as its master, he absorbed some of the energy within the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Wings, allowing himself to step into the peak of the Martial Lord realm. The energy within the Fuyao Heaven-Shaking Fan was also closely related to the Golden Winged Rock. It was even easier to refine it for one's own use. It's not easy to break through to the Martial King realm. You have to comprehend more about the Meridian Spirit. Only by transforming the Meridian Spirit and placing it within the Divine Watchtower can you truly break through to the Martial King realm. Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu nodded his head. The difficulty of placing the Meridian Spirit into the Divine Watchtower was no small matter. In this world, who knew how many cultivators of the Martial Lord realm with extraordinary talent had stopped at the step of transforming the Meridian Spirit? It was even possible that they would never be able to cross that step in their entire lives. Therefore, in the following time, he really had to comprehend more about the Meridian Spirit. Do you plan to go to the sealed area next? Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and asked. It should still be early. It should only take me 5 days to become the master of the Shaking Sky Fan. Only half a day has passed in the outside world. After 5 days, I will go to the sealed area. In the remaining time, I want to refine some pills and take the opportunity to hone my skills in refining pills. Du Xiaofu said to Zhen Qingchun. 5 days. There were still 45 days left in the outside world. It was enough time to refine some pills. He didn't need to refine many high-grade pills. He just needed to refine some marquis-grade pills. At the same time, he could also hone his skills in refining pills. It's time to hone yourself. In the process of refining pills, it can also strengthen your mental and soul power. I have some time recently, so I can teach you how to refine a few special pills. It should be of great help to you in the future. I just don't know if you have all the spiritual herbs on you. Zhen Qingchun smiled. It was finally time for him to perform. Although he majored in talisman arrays, his attainments in medicine and talisman masters were definitely not low. I shouldn't be lacking too many spiritual herbs. Hearing this, with the guidance of his big brother Zhen Qingchun, he was also looking forward to it. Du Xiaofu already had a lot of spiritual herbs on him. In addition, he also packed all the spiritual herbs from the World Pavilion. When refining ordinary pills, he shouldn't be lacking too many spiritual herbs. Bang! A short time later, when everything was ready, Du Xiaofu condensed a hand seal in his hand. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst out from his body. In front of him, runes gathered and arranged themselves, before finally condensing into a cauldron. A blazing aura spread out, and the mysterious runes on the cauldron flickered unceasingly. A powerful aura surged out like a wave. White, green, black, red and yellow, these 5 energies flickered. What an abnormal guy. Looking at the cauldron condensed in front of Du Xiaofu, Zhen Qingquan's wretched face was still filled with helplessness. How many talisman masters could condense a cauldron condensed from 5 types of runes? Let's start preparing. I will now teach you how to refine a kind of profound origin pill. This kind of pill isn't divided into grades, but is greatly related to spiritual herbs. The higher the grade of the main material, the higher the grade of the pill. After taking it, it will allow the user to recover his body's potential in an extremely short time, recovering his peak strength. Zhen Qingquan explained to Du Xiaofu, "In a moment, I will teach you how to refine a kind of berserk pill. This one isn't divided into grades either. The main material is the blood essence of various tyrannical demon beasts. The higher the grade of the blood essence, the higher the grade of the berserk pill. After taking it, it will immediately raise the user's cultivation by a lot, greatly increasing his strength. But after taking the profound origin pill and the berserk pill, the body will be somewhat damaged. Fortunately, the side effects aren't too great, but they can't be taken frequently." There's such a kind of pill? Du Xiaofu's eyes immediately lit up. He didn't expect such a miraculous pill to exist in this world. It was simply inconceivable. The things on Big Brother Zhen Qingquan's body really weren't ordinary. These 2 kinds of pill recipes were obtained by chance in an ancient place. They aren't ordinary things. Don't spread them around. When Zhen Qingquan saw Du Xiaofu's shocked expression, he immediately had a smile on his face. As the big brother, his foundation was not something that this little fellow could compare to. There's another update for today, but it should be a bit later, so I'm telling you in advance. In addition, the next chapter will be a new volume of content. For the new volume, Little Yu has thought of 2 major plots. One is about his name shaking the central continent, and the other is about a huge crisis that requires him to be reborn from the ashes. Both plots will have to be written, but I don't know which one is better, so I'll keep thinking about it. Chapter 673. Du Xiaofu condensed the spiritual stove symbol cauldron and listened to Big Brother Zhen Qingquan recite the pill recipe and things to take note of. Du Xiaofu wrapped his Xian Qi around the spiritual stove symbol cauldron and threw it into the spiritual stove symbol cauldron. Walala, inside the spiritual stove symbol cauldron, a blazing flame whizzed out and wrapped around a spiritual medicine, slowly refining it. The spiritual stove symbol cauldron didn't need to use external objects. The human body had the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The lungs were metal, the liver was wood, the kidney was water, the heart was fire, and the temper was earth. Metal could create water, the kidney's water was the essence of the world, wood could create fire, and the heart's fire was the god of the world. With the heart as the fire and the kidney as the cauldron as the water, condensing the spiritual stove symbol cauldron was enough to burn everything. It was rumored that the strongest spiritual talisman masters could use the spiritual stove symbol cauldron to melt everything. It was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Du Xiaofu wasn't in a hurry to refine the spiritual medicine. He was more focused on listening to Big Brother Zhen Qingquan recite the pill recipe and things to take note of. As the saying goes, sharpening a knife won't delay the work of cutting wood. When refining pills, even the slightest mistake was enough to make one have to start all over again. More importantly, when the time came, the spiritual medicine would be destroyed and the person himself would be injured. Du Xiaofu was very unfamiliar with the pill that his elder brother, Zhen Qingquan, was teaching him to refine. This was an ancient pill formula. It was even more difficult to refine. Therefore, he didn't dare to be careless. However, with Zhen Qingquan's guidance and Du Xiaofu's own comprehension, everything went smoothly. Zhen Qingquan was also affected by the fact that things were going so smoothly. Back when he was at Du Xiaofu's cultivation level, he was also known as a genius. However, compared to this terrifying fellow before him, he was definitely being abused. After memorizing the pill recipe in his mind, Du Xiaofu carefully paid attention to the things that his big brother Zhen Qingquan had mentioned. In the end, he completely immersed himself in refining the pill. The refinement of this kind of pill was extremely taxing on one's mental spiritual strength and internal energy. However, it was also extremely beneficial to one's mental spiritual strength. It was the best way to train one's mental spiritual strength. In the misty space, the runes on the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron fluctuated, and flames surged violently, causing the temperature of the whole space to gradually rise. With the help of his spiritual power, Du Xiaofu slowly refined all kinds of herbs. This process was relatively simple, but it tested one's basic skills the most. There had to be a certain degree of temperature in the flame. If the temperature was too high, the spirit herbs would be directly burned clean. If the temperature was too low, it would not be enough to refine the spirit liquid. It would even affect the purity of the spirit liquid. Therefore, in this process, basic skills were especially important. For Du Xiaofu, refining a new kind of pill was something he had never touched before. He had no experience at all. He could only rely on his own exploration and perception to proceed. Time slowly passed. The extraction of the medicinal liquid within the elixir was completed in Du Xiaofu's hands. Not a single elixir was wasted. This caused Zhen Qingchun, who was nearby, to shoot a glance as he helplessly sighed. Du Xiaofu was now refining the spiritual medicine pill capable of rapidly recovering internal energy. The first step of refining the spirit liquid had already been completed, and the second step was to fuse the spirit liquid into the pill. This step was a lot more complicated than the previous one. In this process, the fusion of the various spirit liquids, as well as the sequence, etc. The slightest mistake would cause all the previous efforts to go to waste. Du Xiaofu was completely focused, carefully controlling the spirit liquid and the flame to start refining, slowly fusing the spirit herbs. Under Du Xiaofu's control, and with the help of his vigorous mental spiritual strength, the spirit liquid inside the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron started to show signs of fusing. Time slowly passed, and in the ancient desolate space, Du Xiaofu wasn't too worried about time. Currently, Du Xiaofu wasn't refining spiritual medicine of high grade, and the level of the spirit herbs he had wasn't enough for him to refine high-grade pills. He could only refine pills of the noble grade and nothing more. With Du Xiaofu's current cultivation as a 6-star spiritual talisman master, refining pills of the noble grade wasn't an extremely hard thing to accomplish, even though they were made using an ancient recipe. After an unknown amount of time, the whistling flames inside the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron finally started to spread a dazzling multicolored light, and a rich medicinal fragrance assailed the nostrils. Buzz! At a certain time, a dazzling multicolored light shot out from inside the spiritual stove and symbol cauldron, emitting energy fluctuations. The pill was wrapped in mysterious runes, radiating dazzling light and emitting a rich medicinal fragrance. Du Xiaofu's eyes flickered, and his hand seals changed. Grabbing at the air above, an incorporeal energy immediately wrapped around that dazzling multicolored pill, sucking it into his palm. The multicolored light vanished, and in Du Xiaofu's palm, a pill the size of half an infant's fist appeared. The fluctuations of energy on the pill slowly vanished, before completely condensing into a lustrous pill covered in runes. Refining a noble-grade spiritual medicine of the Prometha level on your first try is already pretty good. Zhen Qingchun shot a glance at the pill in Du Xiaofu's palm, pretending to be indifferent, as if he didn't care about it at all. Little did he know that right now, Zhen Qingchun wanted to curse him inside. He knew the difficulty of refining a spiritual medicine of the spiritual medicine of Xianyuan. It was absolutely incomparable to refining an ordinary pill. Back then, when he refined it for the first time, he directly failed twice, but Du Xiaofu actually succeeded in refining it on the first try. I feel like the refining speed can be a bit faster. If I strengthen the main ingredients a bit, I reckon the grade can be raised a bit as well. Du Xiaofu said as if he had understood something. In the process of refining, he had benefited greatly and found a lot of feelings. Zhen Qingchun looked at Du Xiaofu and really wanted to curse him inside, but after opening his mouth a few times, he simply ran to the side and didn't say anything. He felt that his heart was suffocating and needed to calm down by himself. After Du Xiaofu rested for an hour, he continued to immerse himself in refining pills. Time gradually passed by. 5 days passed quickly in the outside world as well. In these few days, Du Xiaofu had officially become the disciple of Elder Gu Qingyang, and the news of him receiving the approval of the sect master had spread throughout the entire ancient heaven sect, shocking many onlookers. As for the outside world, when the news spread, it also alarmed many forces. For a moment, they were all trying to find out about Du Xiaofu's origin. Unfortunately, Du Xiaofu's origin was like a mystery to the vast and boundless Zhong province, and they couldn't find out any information at all. On the afternoon of the 5th day, Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in the World Pavilion. His face was extremely pale, and it was obvious that he had consumed a lot of energy. "President, what's wrong with you?" In the World Pavilion, Gu Zhangyu saw Du Xiaofu's pale face and immediately ran over nervously. "I'm fine. Take these pills and sell them in the World Pavilion." Du Xiaofu smiled and took out jade bottles of various sizes from his Jiankuan bag. There were many pills in them. Other than the Profound Yuan pill and Berserk pill, Du Xiaofu had also refined many other pills. During the 45 days in the ancient desolate space, other than recovering by breathing, Du Xiaofu had been refining pills. He was especially familiar with refining the Profound Yuan pill and Berserk pill. The more he refined, the more familiar he became. As for refining other noble-grade pills, Du Xiaofu was very familiar with them, and it wasn't difficult for him to refine them. After that, Du Xiaofu explained the effects of the Profound Yuan pill and Berserk pill to Gu Zhangyu in detail. Under Gu Zhangyu's dumbfounded gaze, Du Xiaofu set a price that was twice as high as other pills of the same grade. Such good pills can save lives at critical moments. Isn't it too low to set a price that is only twice as low? Gu Zhangyu asked Du Xiaofu after recovering from his shock. He felt that it was still too low to set a price that was only twice as high. These pills could be of great use in times of danger, and could even save his life. Du Xiaofu looked at Gu Zhangyu for a while, then gritted his teeth and said, "Then let's set it twice as high. 3 times the price of pills of the same grade should be enough. Let's test the market first." "Alright, let's do it like that. A total of 3 times the price." Gu Zhangyu smiled knowingly. He felt that the Profound Yuan pill and Berserk pill would definitely have a huge market. There's also this item. Take it and study it when you have time. Du Xiaofu passed a jade strip to Gu Zhangyu. It was the jade strip that allowed the Medicine King to copy the puppet technique left behind by his master, the Weapon Sovereign. Gu Zhangyu's attainments as a medicine symbol master were neither too high nor too low in the Manchu. Du Xiaofu suddenly remembered that Gu Zhangyu was a weapon symbol master, so he let Gu Zhangyu try out the puppet technique first. It could be said that he was treating Gu Zhangyu as one of his own. "Thank you, President. I will take a look at it when I have time." Gu Zhangyu smiled gratefully and immediately kept the jade strip in his Jiankuan bag. There were many things going on in the World Pavilion recently, so he didn't have time to look at it now. At this moment, how would Gu Zhangyu know that it was because of this jade strip that he became one of the top puppeteers in the entire central continent in just a short period of time? The puppets that he refined were hard to come by, and they were priceless. One day, with the support of the World Association, Gu Zhangyu would become a famous figure in the central continent. And all of Gu Zhangyu's achievements started with this jade strip. After giving some instructions, Du Xiaofu left the World Pavilion. He had to go to the sealed land tomorrow. He had just left the desolate ancient space, so he had to properly recover tonight. Today's update is complete. Fortunately, it didn't delay the update time. Chapter 674. The next morning, in the ancient heaven sect, the mountains under the white sky were as black as iron. Mist rose up and separated the mountains like a milky white veil. Everything was like a dream. A moment later, the sky was filled with red clouds and the rising sun. The golden light was dazzling as it enveloped a huge green mountain peak. Whoosh whoosh, the mountain peak was surrounded by clouds and mist. In the distance, the mountain range rose up and down. It was magnificent and boundless. An old man with a sage-like aura and a purple-robed youth descended from the sky. The old man had an ancient sword on his back and looked like a peerless expert. It was Elder Gu Qingyang of the ancient heaven sect. The purple-robed youth had a purple broadsword on his back. On his resolute face, his eyes were deep and clear. Apart from Du Xiaofu, there was no one else. Martial Uncle Qingyang, Xiaofu, you're here. In front of the mountain peak, there was a 7-foot-tall middle-aged man. His figure was thin, but he looked slender and sturdy. Looking at Elder Gu Qingyang and Du Xiaofu slowly descending from the sky, the man's glass-like eyes were filled with a smile. He wore a green robe with green patterns embroidered on it. His long black hair was neatly combed into a bun. A few strands of hair fell down from his ears. He was handsome and had a dignified temperament. Greetings, senior brother sect master. Du Xiaofu bowed. The middle-aged man was the sect master of the ancient heaven sect, Sima Taxing. Let's begin. Elder Gu Qingyang nodded to Sima Taxing and then looked at Du Xiaofu. His eyes became serious as he instructed, Xiaofu, once you enter the sealed land, be careful. Don't put yourself in danger. If something goes wrong, come back immediately. Disciple understands. I'll pay more attention. Du Xiaofu nodded. Leave your spiritual soul power on it just in case. We also know your situation. Sima Taxing handed a rune jade slip to Du Xiaofu. Chi, Du Xiaofu took the rune jade from Sima Taxing's hand. He formed a seal and placed his soul power on it. Be careful after you enter. Those who entered the sealed land in the past were all stronger than you. Don't be careless. Once you feel something is wrong, come out immediately. Don't take any risks. After taking the rune jade after Du Xiaofu's soul power, Du Xiaofu, Sima taxing the rune jade. Du Xiaofu nodded and asked Sima taking Xing, Sect Master, where is the sealed place? Sima taxing. Taxing. Is black hair. And black taxing on the mountain, his black hair. His hair taxing his figure. His black hair. His black hair. His black hair. His black is his dragon heaven star's hair. Black taxing. Here. Du Xiaofu was puzzled. He looked around. This mountain was above the main hall of the ancient heaven sect. In the distance, there were undulating mountains. Under the steep mountain, there seemed to be a bottomless abyss. It was so dark that nothing could be seen. Only fog-like water vapor flowed inside. It didn't seem like a sealed land. Elder Gu Qingyang signaled Du Xiaofu to look down the bottomless abyss and said, "The sealed land is below." Below? Du Xiaofu looked at the black mist under the cliff. In the bottomless abyss, his vision was blocked. He couldn't see anything clearly and there were no energy fluctuations. It's below. You can see the sealed land when you go down directly. Only those who have comprehended the golden-winged rock beast ability can enter. Sima Taxing Xing said, Master, senior brother sect master, I will be careful. Don't worry too much. A moment later, Du Xiaofu jumped under the instructions of sect master Sima Taxing Xing and his master, Elder Gu Qingyang. His qi gushed out and wrapped around his body like a golden halo. He directly jumped into the bottomless abyss. Under the bottomless abyss, there was fog everywhere, which was extremely obstructive to vision. Whoosh, whoosh, his figure wrapped in qi slowly fell. There was a whooshing sound of airflow in his ears. After a long time, he seemed to have gone deep into the ground. Suddenly, Du Xiaofu's figure stopped in the gray fog. Wrapped in the golden halo, he looked around and finally locked his eyes on the left side. He didn't move, and his figure flashed away. Whoosh, whoosh, the airflow whistled and the mist surged. Inside the bottomless abyss, the area was getting wider and wider. It seems to be inside. A moment later, in the vast gray mist, Du Xiaofu seemed to have found something under the keen perception of his spiritual soul power and the golden-winged rock technique. His figure stopped in the gray mist. Du Xiaofu's clear eyes moved in his eye sockets, slightly concentrating. Qi-la. After that, Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows, and a tyrannical and fierce aura swept out from his body. In a short instant, a golden light flickered on his back, and a pair of golden rune wings stretched out. The wings flapped, flowing light overflowed and filled the air. The airflow whistled and shook, as if a real golden-winged rock had descended, suspended in the gray mist, carrying the domineering will of the golden-winged rock clan. Whoosh, 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 At this moment in the surrounding gray space, something seemed to be touched, and the clouds rolled and rippled. In the surrounding space, there were ripples, and a faint golden light spread out. Then, a spatial vortex appeared in front of Du Xiaofu. It's inside. Seeing this, Du Xiaofu's expression became even more serious. The golden rune wings on his back flapped, and his figure directly entered the spatial vortex. As Du Xiaofu's figure entered, the spatial vortex immediately returned to its original state. In the vast space, mountains stood tall. There was no lush green, but it was magnificent and desolate, as if this space had existed for countless years and came from ancient times. Whoosh! Du Xiaofu's figure appeared in this space, and his eyes trembled. A huge invisible pressure enveloped his body in an instant. Under that terrifying pressure, it seemed to be able to completely crush a person in an instant. It was extremely domineering and fierce, and it was simply unbearable for ordinary people. Du Xiaofu immediately activated the golden winged rock technique, and an aura that was similar to the domineering and fierce aura in this space swept out from his body. Only then did he feel that the pressure immediately disappeared. What a terrifying pressure! Du Xiaofu was shocked. Such a terrifying pressure was extraordinary. No wonder it was said that only those who were proficient in the abilities of the golden winged rock technique could enter. Putting aside the fact that those who were not proficient in the abilities of the golden winged rock technique could not enter, even those who were not proficient in the abilities of the golden winged rock technique would find it extremely difficult to resist the terrifying pressure inside the sealed space. After recovering from his shock, Du Xiaofu formed a seal and called out the small tower from the ancient desolation space. Zhen Qingquan's illusory soul appeared in it. What power! It has something to do with the golden winged rock technique. As soon as Zhen Qingquan emerged from the small tower, his face immediately changed. The domineering and fierce pressure even suppressed his soul. He immediately retreated into the small tower, and his voice rang out from the small tower. This place has something to do with the experts of the Golden Winged Rock clan. This sealed space is no ordinary sealed space. If I've guessed correctly, this should be a soul seal. What's a soul seal? Du Xiaofu asked in confusion. The aura of the Golden Winged Rock technique immediately enveloped the small tower that Zhen Qingquan was hiding in. The seal of the soul is a great method that experts set up at the cost of their soul when they die. Generally speaking, no expert would easily set up a place where their soul is sealed at the cost of their soul, unless there is something that they want to protect or something. Within the small tower, Zhen Qingqing's mellow voice said to Du Xiaofu, the place where the primordial spirit is sealed should have been set up by an expert of the golden-winged Great Peng clan before he died. The expert of the golden-winged rock clan was able to set up a soul seal, and it's still so powerful even after so many years. He must have been extremely powerful when he was alive, probably at a terrifying level. It does seem a little special. There seems to be something different in front. Du Xiaofu looked at the continuous mountain peaks in front of him. In the depths of the magnificent mountain range, there seemed to be a familiar aura slowly drifting over. The aura was domineering and fierce, but it seemed to be summoning him. Whoosh! Du Xiaofu's body was wrapped in a faint golden light as he released the aura of the golden winged rock. His figure immediately swept forward. In the space, the deeper he went, the more clearly Du Xiaofu could feel that the enormous pressure was becoming more and more powerful. Without the protection of the golden winged rock, even an ordinary martial king realm cultivator would be easily crushed by the pressure. They would not be able to resist the terrifying and domineering pressure at all. The space was vast, much larger than Du Xiaofu had imagined. He was careful and vigilant along the way. Fortunately, he had not encountered any danger. Be careful, there seems to be something wrong around here. Suddenly, Zhen Qingquan's voice sounded from the small tower. Du Xiaofu's figure suddenly stopped in midair. His spiritual soul strength immediately probed the surroundings. Chi 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 chi. At the same time, the space in front of Du Xiaofu fluctuated. On top of a huge mountain peak in front of him, a dazzling light of runes suddenly bloomed. An extremely fierce aura swept out like a storm. I've been outside for the past few days. I visited my relatives and also went to the hospital for a checkup. I just got home today, and the car journey was delayed. Therefore, the first chapter is only published now. Xiao Yu will be able to steadily update tomorrow. The few chapters that I owe everyone can be returned tomorrow or the day after. The remaining 2 chapters today will be published by Xiao Yu around 11:30 p.m. to 12 p.m. I'll let you guys know first so that you won't have to wait too long. Chapter 675. G. Amidst the dazzling runes, a huge white goose flapped its wings and flew over. In an instant, it pierced through space and hovered in the air above Du Xiaofu. The aura of the huge white goose was very strong and terrifying. Its sharp eyes were like 2 red suns, bright and threatening. It's the white cloud demonic goose, a demonic beast on the heavenly beast ranking. Its ranking is not too high but not too low either. Luckily, it's not its original body and is only a remnant soul. It should be the remnant soul of a white cloud demonic goose that the elite from the Golden Rock clan had subdued. It was used to defend the primordial spirit seal. Zhen Qingquan's voice traveled into Du Xiaofu's ears from the small tower and told Du Xiaofu the identity of the huge goose in front of him. The huge white cloud demonic goose hovered in the air and covered the sky. It flapped its wings and looked down at the mountains. Gee! The gigantic white cloud demon goose phantom let out a sharp cry. It flapped its wings and swept towards Du Xiaofu. As its wings flapped, the runes under its wings swept out. Its entire body was wrapped in a dazzling white light. It looked like rolling clouds and mist as it attacked Du Xiaofu. Sky Shaker Wings. Du Xiaofu made his move and used the Sky Shaker Wings. His hand was like a fan and instantly swept towards the white cloud demonic goose. Walala, the Sky Shaker Wings' domineering aura caused the huge white cloud demonic goose's eyes to tremble. There was a hint of fear in its eyes and it spat out runes from its sharp beak. It actually blocked Du Xiaofu's Sky Shaker Wings. At the same time, the white cloud demonic goose flapped its wings and brought with it a terrifying storm. It was like an endless wave of ripples and directly charged towards Du Xiaofu. Rock descends to the 9 heavens. Du Xiaofu shouted and the wings on his back flapped violently. The sky was filled with golden light. Gee! The white cloud demon goose phantom seemed to have felt an incomparably fearful aura. It screeched and roared, and its sharp eyes were faintly filled with fear. Symbols rushed out and tore apart the vast sky. However, under Du Xiaofu's rock descends to the 9 heavens, which resembled the descent of a true golden-winged rock, the white cloud demon goose's illusory image began to be suppressed involuntarily, as if it was innately suppressed. Rumble! In such a collision, under the terrifying aura, large amounts of mountain rocks below were shattered. Dust and gravel shot up into the sky, the ground cracked, and huge rocks exploded, turning into fine powder. The golden talisman wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped powerfully and domineeringly. They swept through the sky and suppressed with great force, destroying everything in their path. GG, the white cloud demon goose's phantom screeched, and its fierce eyes gradually became submissive. Then, its huge body burst out a series of broken runes in midair. The energy shot out like fireworks, causing the sky to be filled with resplendent light. In the dazzling light of the runes, a palm-sized white cloud demon goose appeared. The surrounding ripples fluctuated, and the energy fluctuations caused ripples in people's hearts. That's a strand of the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul. You've already suppressed its baleful aura, and what's left is pure beast soul energy. You're a soul symbol master, so if you can obtain it, it will be of great use. You can consume it to strengthen your spiritual energy, or you can refine symbol tools and Dao tools, increasing your power like a tiger that has grown wings. Zhen Qingquan's voice once again transmitted into Du Xiaofu's ears from the small pagoda. Pure beast soul energy, no need to be too complicated. At this moment, the golden light in Du Xiaofu's eyes had yet to disappear. Suddenly, the golden light in his eyes intensified, as if the illusory image of a golden-winged rock was soaring out of his eyes. The talisman wings on his back flickered, and a terrifying, overbearing aura whistled through the sky. Soul Devour! Du Xiaofu opened his mouth, and a golden light spurted out from his throat like a suppressed volcano. In an instant, a terrifying energy gushed out, and like a nemesis, it directly wrapped around the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul in the air, and finally swallowed it into his mouth. Soul Devour, one of the golden-winged rock's ultimate techniques, could devour spiritual energy and spiritual energy. It was rumored that in ancient times, the golden-winged rock experts ate dragons as food and could even devour dragon souls. How terrifying was that? Du Xiaofu cultivated the real golden-winged rock's techniques. Not long ago, when he comprehended the rock chaos-shattering claw, he also comprehended the Soul Devour, but he didn't have a suitable opportunity to use it. After devouring the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul, Du Xiaofu immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. His hands formed a seal, and his eyes closed. He began to refine the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul. He could use it to strengthen his spiritual energy and spiritual energy. Within this space, Du Xiaofu didn't have to worry about others coming in, so he could refine it without worry. After refining the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul, the ball of light condensed from spiritual energy in Du Xiaofu's mind slowly rotated. It was like a small star, and a strange energy spread out, releasing a dazzling light in his Naiwen Palace. It illuminated the entire Naiwen Palace, and its aura was ancient. Traces of the white cloud demon goose's remnant soul were refined by Du Xiaofu using the golden-winged rock's technique, and entered Du Xiaofu's Naiwen Palace in his mind. Then, the refined spiritual energy was guided by an invisible force in Du Xiaofu's Naiwen Palace. When it entered Du Xiaofu's Naiwen Palace, the ball of light condensed from spiritual energy immediately became more solid and dazzling. The white cloud demon goose's remnant soul didn't seem big, but after being refined by Du Xiaofu, it was extremely large for Du Xiaofu's current level of cultivation. Walala! 3 days later, a mysterious white light slowly enveloped Du Xiaofu's body. It was like a divine light, and it emitted an ancient pressure. Within his Naiwen Palace, the ball of light condensed from spiritual energy had become much more solid, and its volume seemed to have increased by one size. The ancient aura that fluctuated from within his Naiwen Palace was like the howling of wind and thunder. Compared to before, it was unknown how much more powerful it was. What a powerful spiritual energy! Once it condenses into a primordial spirit, how terrifying will it be? Zhen Qingchuan's voice sounded from within the small pagoda. Sensing the aura fluctuation that was spreading out from Du Xiaofu's body, Zhen Qingchun was also shocked. At this time, Du Xiaofu was only a 6-star talisman master, but his spiritual soul power at this moment was simply abnormal. It was enough to kill talisman masters at the same cultivation level. Huff! When the white light around Du Xiaofu's body gradually disappeared, his tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. He seemed to have also felt the changes within his Naiwen Palace. His mouth was slightly astonished, and then a smile appeared on his face. Du Xiaofu's mind probed, and he discovered that the ball of spiritual energy within his Naiwen Palace had become much more solid. The strength of his spiritual energy had also increased by a lot. The remnant soul of the demonic white cloud goose is really terrifying. If there were a few more of them, it would be of great help to my spiritual energy. Du Xiaofu said in a low voice. He could feel that the spiritual energy in his mind had increased by almost 50% compared to before. In your dreams, you are really greedy. Do you know how lucky you are to be able to absorb this remnant soul? Do you think that it's easy to strengthen your spiritual energy? Not every talisman master can do it. At this moment, hearing Du Xiaofu's underestimation, Zhen Qingchun couldn't help but speak out. This guy was definitely a typical example of greedy and insatiable. It should be known that for a soul symbol master, spiritual energy was absolutely the most important. How difficult was it to strengthen one's spiritual energy? Generally speaking, even if one obtained a remnant soul that was suitable for a soul symbol master to swallow and refine, one wouldn't be able to obtain too much energy. At most, 30% would be a miracle. It wasn't easy to swallow and refine it for one's own use. However, Du Xiaofu was different. He had directly swallowed and refined the remnant soul of the demonic white cloud goose. his spiritual energy had greatly increased, but he was still not satisfied. If other soul symbol masters had heard Du Xiaofu's previous words, it would have been enough to cause public anger. I hope that I can encounter such an opportunity again next time. Du Xiaofu knew the importance of spiritual energy to himself. As a soul symbol master, no matter if it was medicine symbol master, array symbol master, or weapon symbol master, spiritual energy was definitely one of the most important factors. If one's spiritual energy was strong, it would be enough to show disdain for cultivators of the same level. If there is still such a remnant soul in this space, it will be a great opportunity for you. Just based on the remnant soul of the demonic white cloud goose that you obtained, it will be enough to make your trip worthwhile. Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu smiled faintly. The Naiwen Palace in his mind was already extremely strong to begin with. At this moment, it was strengthened once again. Above the ball of light that was condensed from his spiritual soul power, his mental energy was exceptionally abundant. Continue. After a while, Du Xiaofu continued to go deeper into the sealed space, following the aura that seemed to be calling him. The deeper he went into the space, the more powerful the pressure became. In the space ahead, there were even traces of golden light. In the space, the golden light was faintly discernible. It was blurry and extremely hazy. The space was also very quiet. It was deathly quiet. The pressure in the space became stronger and stronger. Even Du Xiaofu, who had activated the golden rock technique, found it more and more difficult to withstand the pressure. The pressure is getting stronger and stronger. Du Xiaofu fully activated the golden rock technique's aura to resist the pressure on his body and continued to go deeper into the space. Chapter 676. But the deeper Du Xiaofu went in, the more uncomfortable he felt. He was starting to feel like he was being suppressed. The power is too strong. We seem to be getting closer to something. Zhen Qingchun, who was inside the small pagoda, also felt the terrifying pressure outside and sensed some changes. I can feel something calling out to me. It seems to have something to do with the golden winged rock. Du Xiaofu said to his brother Zhen Qingchun. Be careful. Don't be careless. Zhen Qingchun reminded Du Xiaofu. The pressure in this space was causing him to be tense as well. That is? Suddenly, Du Xiaofu saw something special at the foot of a mountain. Immediately he dashed down. There was a dried corpse at the foot of the mountain. The robe on the body was draped over the dried corpse. It seemed like this person had been dead for tens of years. Someone from the Manchu. Du Xiaofu saw the badge on the corpse's robe, which indicated that it was a disciple of the ancient heaven sect. Du Xiaofu guessed that this person should be one of the people who had entered this space previously. He should be one of the people who had mastered the golden winged rock. But Lin Fan did not know why this person had fallen in this sealed ground. After checking the dried corpse, Du Xiaofu bowed down. It was a greeting to the dead. It was also a greeting to a senior from the Manchu. Senior, it would be a waste for you to carry your Qiankuan pouch with you. Why don't you hand it over to me? After taking the Qiankuan pouch from the dried corpse, Du Xiaofu went deeper into the space. After walking for a long time, a gigantic mountain appeared before Du Xiaofu. The gigantic mountain stood tall amongst the other mountains. It was extremely majestic. Boom! Just as Du Xiaofu appeared before the gigantic mountain, the entire mountain trembled violently. Then the entire space trembled as well. Suddenly, the space trembled as a golden light flashed. What's that? At this moment, Du Xiaofu stopped and looked at the huge mountain in front of him. At this moment, the golden light on the mountain peak became more and more dazzling. Then, mysterious runes flickered and emitted a blazing light. At the top of the last mountain peak, an enormous golden-winged rock flapped its wings and soared into the sky. Gee! The golden-winged Peng let out a cry, its voice piercing through the clouds like rolling thunder, causing the space to fluctuate. The surrounding mountain peaks were on the verge of collapsing. The golden light was dazzling, and the entire world was trembling. Walala, the golden-winged rock spread its wings, covering the sky and the sun. Its entire body was shining with golden light. As its wings flapped, the spatial airflow swept out like a storm, causing the surrounding space to seem as if it was about to collapse. Around the figure of the golden-winged Peng, there were mysterious runes that covered the sky and the sun. Its ferocious aura covered the entire space. Looking at it from afar made one's heart tremble. That huge golden-winged rock was too huge. Du Xiaofu felt that it was much bigger than the golden-winged rock he saw in the Savage Beast Mountain range. Its aura was very terrifying. Du Xiaofu raised his head. The blood in his body was boiling for no reason. The pressure that spread from the gigantic golden-winged Peng made it difficult for him to resist. The gigantic golden-winged Peng's huge eyes were filled with golden light like the sun. It was directly looking down on Du Xiaofu. Its aura was vast and mighty, and its aura was incomparably domineering. Gee! A cry resounded, and the terrifying golden-winged Peng disappeared from the sky above the mountain peak. The entire space returned to silence, as if nothing had happened. Golden-winged Peng, that's the aura of the real golden-winged Peng. There must be something related to the golden-winged Peng on that mountain peak. From the small pagoda in Du Xiaofu's embrace, Du Xiaofu's voice sounded out in shock. Why did it disappear? Du Xiaofu raised his eyebrows. Under the terrifying aura just now, Du Xiaofu could clearly feel that there was something related to the golden-winged Peng on the mountain peak. It was extremely likely that it was an absolute treasure. Chi. With a slight movement of his eyes, the golden rune wings on Du Xiaofu's back flapped, and he immediately flew into the sky. Chi. Suddenly, just as Du Xiaofu's figure flew out, ripples suddenly appeared in the space in front of him. A dazzling rune flashed out, and like a shockwave, it fiercely smashed into Du Xiaofu's body. The energy was too powerful. It pushed Du Xiaofu back by over 30 meters, causing Du Xiaofu to be surprised. Chi. Du Xiaofu gritted his teeth and frowned. The wings on his back shone brightly as he flapped them with all his might and charged forward, wanting to try again. Whoosh, however, the result was the same as before. A wave of rune energy rushed out from the space in front of him and heavily engulfed Du Xiaofu's body. Du Xiaofu was unable to resist the terrifying power and was forced back. What a powerful seal! This seal wasn't created by the golden-winged Peng. It was created by someone. Du Xiaofu stabilized his body. The aura in his body surged, and his aura was slightly chaotic. The energy was just too powerful. However, Du Xiaofu had already noticed that there was a seal in front of him. However, the seal had nothing to do with the golden-winged Peng. That was why he couldn't enter. Zhen Qingxuan's voice came out from the small pagoda in Du Xiaofu's arms. The seal was created by someone on purpose. It doesn't have much attacking power. It should only be used to prevent everyone from entering. I don't believe that I can't enter. There was something related to the golden-winged Peng on the mountain peak. Du Xiaofu naturally wouldn't give up. Even if there was a seal, it might not be able to stop him. As soon as he finished speaking, he formed a hand seal. Du Xiaofu activated the vain spirit of the Five Fingers Mountain. Amidst the golden light, his figure merged into the vain spirit and immediately headed for the seal in front of him. The vain spirit of the Five Fingers Mountain wasn't afraid of any ordinary seals or talisman arrays. Now that there was a seal blocking it, Du Xiaofu wasn't too worried. Chi. The phantom of the Five Fingers Mountain flew across the sky and touched the seal. Immediately, dazzling runes rushed out and blocked the phantom of the Five Fingers Mountain. Dazzling light shone as the symbols made contact, shooting into the air. The illusory image of the Five-Finger Mountain appeared in the sky. Golden light erupted, and mighty power poured into the sky, as if it wanted to break through the seal. The surrounding space rippled and caved in. However, no matter what, the Five-Finger Mountain illusionary vein spirit was unable to break through the last bit of the seal. This continued for a full hour. Dazzling runes erupted in midair, but the golden phantom of the Five-Fingered Mountain was still unable to break through the last layer of the seal. Chi-la-la, withdrawing his meridian spirit, Du Xiaofu staggered back a few steps in the air. His face was pale as he had consumed a lot of energy. To think that I can't pass through, at this moment, Du Xiaofu's gaze turned serious and he frowned slightly. Du Xiaofu frowned slightly. He did not expect that he would still be unable to break through the seal even after activating his arterial spirit. He kept feeling that he was just a hair away. If his comprehension of the meridian spirit was a little stronger, Du Xiaofu felt that he would be able to break through the seal. In the small tower, Zhen Qingchun said, "This seal is not simple. It is not a simple seal. The power of the seal is also very strong. It is much stronger than your current strength. If Du Xiaoyao was here, he should be able to break through the seal with his original body. However, your meridian spirit is still a little weaker. Brother Qingchun, do you have any ideas?" Du Xiaofu asked Zhen Qingchun. "The power inside has a great impact on me. I'm afraid I can't help you break the seal. You can only rely on yourself." Zhen Qingchun continued, "I'm afraid you can only find a way to break this seal. Even if you go out and find the experts of the ancient heaven sect, they won't be able to enter this sealed space. It seems that I can only find a way by myself." Du Xiaofu frowned slightly and looked at the towering mountain in front of him. The aura that was calling him was getting stronger and stronger. However, he could not enter the seal outside for the time being. "I just felt your meridian spirit. If you can improve it, you may have a chance to break through the seal," Zhen Qingchun said to Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu looked at the mountain in front of him and said softly, "I feel the same. If I can improve my meridian spirit, I may have a chance to break through the seal." After a while, Du Xiaofu placed a simple seal in the cave of the mountain before the seal. Then he directly called out the ancient desolate space. His figure flashed and entered the ancient desolate space. Comprehend the meridian spirit well. Du Xiaofu sat cross-legged and formed a seal. Suddenly, the meridian spirit phantom of the five-fingered mountain spread out behind him. It was shining with golden light and flickering runes, covering the mysterious runes. Walala, not long after, the meridian spirit phantom of the five-fingered mountain began to grow, evolve, and condense behind Du Xiaofu, whose eyes were already closed. The mysterious runes flickered and the meridian spirit phantom of the mountain seemed to be given life. It gradually produced dense spiritual energy around Du Xiaofu's body, evolving and arranging itself. It seemed to be endlessly mysterious. In order to break through the seal, Du Xiaofu planned to comprehend his meridian spirit well this time. If he could make progress in the meridian spirit phantom of the mountain, Du Xiaofu felt that he would have a chance to break through the extraordinary seal. The meridian spirit phantom of the mountain flickered and a terrifying power spread out. The golden light enveloped Du Xiaofu. The mysterious runes crisscrossed around Du Xiaofu's body. They grew, evolved, condensed, and produced dense spiritual energy. They communicated with the energy of heaven and earth, and multicolored light spread throughout the cave. As time passed, not many people knew that Du Xiaofu had entered the other sealed area. Even among the elders of the ancient heaven sect, not many people knew about it. However, on the fifth day after Du Xiaofu entered the sealed area, a major event occurred in the ancient heaven sect. They are tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.